This is the Ropen Radio Network, broadcasting from the heart of Oregon, Salem's capital. Welcome in, my fellow Oregonians. If you're joining us on CC Media, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and Spotify, I'm glad you're here. But if you are listening on Spotify, you're in for a longer show, so make sure you listen to all of it. We are going to go into more in-depth information. We have a very exciting show on the docket. Glad you're all listening, glad you're all here. This is what this network is all about. For you, the eyewitness. I want to give a shout out to my tech support, Luis Mendoza, Hunter Winnan, and Jessica Scott. They're what help makes all of this a reality. For us to bring this show to Salem. And then finally, now, Salem is listening. Also want to give a shout out to my fellow comrade, Garth Guessman. I know he is with us in spirit. Garth, if you're listening, you're watching, I think you're going to find this really fascinating, and we're praying right now for your wife that she makes a full recovery. So we are with you in spirit, we know that you are with us as well. As you know, there has been a polygraph examination that took place in Albany, Oregon, not too long ago. I'm happy to say, and very excited, that eyewitness is joining me in the studio today. Before we get to that, you may see a difference here now. We are in Studio 1 at CC Media, and we are going to be here for future shows until the radio wings open up, to which then I will bring other eyewitnesses down from all walks of life. As you know, we've spoken to lawyers, doctors, who have seen something in our world that shouldn't be around, that shouldn't exist. It's said to be extinct, but what do you know? They're out there still. So it's going to be a very exciting future for the Ropen Network here in Salem. Now, I want to take this time to introduce every one of these fine individuals to you. On my left, we have Peter Beach. We have Milt Marcy on my right. We have Jeff Carone. And finally, my eyewitness. This is Catherine Fuller. Welcome, all of you. Before we begin, I want the audience to know who you are, a little bit of your background, if you would be so kind to share. Peter?
Well, I'm a microbiologist, retired, also taught school, and have done a number of expeditions for various thought to be extinct animals.
Excellent. Superb. Milt?
I'm an insurance agent by trade. Don't hold that against me, please. But over the years, I've been involved in a number of, should we say, projects or efforts to validate the Bible. And that has come down in the last 20, 25 years to a lot of work with animals that are thought to be extinct. I've worked with Pete on that. And so I have been personally involved, and I've also financed a number of those expeditions. We've done work into the Central Africa, looking for a sauropod type creature, and of course in Papua New Guinea, and also here at home and in Canada. So we're really excited about this program.
That's the Mokele Mbembe.
Well, that's what one tribe calls it.
Okay.
It's called Nyamala, Lukulabembe, many different names, and that creature has been spotted all over Cameroon and the other nations around Cameroon there. So
yep.
It's varied.
Yeah, there's been a lot of research over that one
Very
for
much.
the last decades.
What most people don't realize, though, there's 1 million miles of swamp.
There's also 600 different dialects in Africa.
Yeah. So you're talking about a creature that's maybe a couple hundred of them, and they can submerge and so on and so forth. So it's very difficult.
Presumed to be extinct.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeff?
Jeff Carone. I'm an evangelist and also teach the Word of God. So, yep. Excited with creation science and everything involving that and the spiritual aspect of what's going on in the world and pulling that all together. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Catherine, so happy to have you here. Give me a little bit about your background. What do you do?
I'm retired now, but during my work time, I was working in banking for most of my life.
Okay.
I've done other things, taught beauty school and taught at Job Corps and taught, different things since I moved to Astoria, since there isn't any corporate banking opportunities. And I have a bachelor's in business, and I'm retired. I take care of my dad who has dementia.
Yeah. I want to hear more about this encounter. As you know, a broadcast was done where we had you in person, got a little bit of an understanding, quick, brief idea. But now I'd like to go into the full encounter from when this happened, 1999. Take us through all of it.
Okay. My husband and I and my 2 boys were going to Point Defiance Zoo just for a family outing. We stopped at a viewpoint, and my husband and I got out of the car, and we stepped over the barrier to go right up to the edge of the cliff. And the boys were in the car because it's a cliff and they're boys. And we just stood there looking out over the Puget Sound, and Vashon Island is directly across from us. And I saw something I didn't know what it was in the sky to the right of the coast of about the middle of Vashon Island, already in flight. I didn't see it take off, but I said, "Look, honey, there's an eagle." And my husband said, "That's not an eagle." And we just kept watching it and watching it and watching it. It got closer and closer and closer. And the first thing I noticed about it was that it had this bony crest coming out of the back of its head, which is not normal for things that I normally see in the sky flying. And I noticed that it also didn't, it was gliding. It didn't flap its wings like a bird up and down. And the closer it got, I saw more and more details. And I said to my husband, "What is that?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "It's a pterodactyl." And he said, "It can't be. Those have been extinct for millions of years." And I said, "Honey, we're looking at one." And then both of us were just kind of transfixed and mesmerized. We didn't move a muscle. And this thing came flying, crossed in front of us, and at one point, the closest it was to us was about 13 feet away in the sky, right in front of us. And I got to see every detail of this thing. And it landed about, about 37 feet to my left on the same cliff. I didn't see it land, but I heard it land in the brush. And it sounded like a big hand glider covering and landing on brush, undergrowth under the trees. And my husband turned to me and he said, "Get the boys in the car."
Okay.
And I got the boys in the car. And as we were leaving, I said, "We've got to tell somebody about this. We have to." We were at the zoo. They probably had tranquilizers or nets or something that they could contain it with. And I was worried that, there's a lot of people there. There's a beach, there's, a zoo, there's an aquarium. And this thing was very big. The wingspan was about 35 feet.
35.
In length, yeah. From the tip of one side of the wing to the other was 35 feet. And the body was a little bit bigger than a person. The actual body was bigger than a person, a little bit bigger than a person, more elongated. And the legs are shorter. And there's what I thought was weird was there's webbing in between the legs, like kind of like when you think about a penguin, how short their legs are, you know, with the little flesh in between the legs. They're not proportionate like, you know, we always think we're proportionate, but it's comparison to an animal. But the webbing encased everything, you know, the legs kind of stuck onto the body, the webbing stuck onto the body, the skin or whatever you want to call it, stuck onto the arms. And there was these little, what I would call them to be fingers or curled up little claws or hands in the middle of the top of the wings.
Okay.
And there's 2 feet on the bottom with pretty substantial looking claws, and they looked kind of stout, sort of muscular, the legs.
Okay.
And the beak was, I remember thinking that I was going to have to tell somebody how big this thing was, and I just stared at it and studied it. And the beak, I thought, I'm not very good with measurements, so I was trying to think of something to compare it to, and I remember thinking, if that thing wanted to, it could put its whole beak over the top of my husband's head and fit him completely inside his
Wow.
his
Okay.
beak, and his feet might have been sticking out of the front of the beak of that thing. And then I just kind of shook my head and thought, I don't want to think about that, and I stopped thinking about it. But that's how big it was, the beak alone. And the back, the bony crest was, it was more than half and less than 3/4 the length of the beak, I remember. And I want to say 5/8 of the size of the beak. And I could see its eye. And
Tell me
it was
about that.
it was black. It was just black. I didn't see any white.
Okay.
It didn't have an eye like a crocodile. It didn't have a cat
That's
eye.
the question a lot of people are going to ask is, if this is a reptile, would it have an eye like an alligator or crocodilian? Because it is supposed to be in the same category as those creatures, okay? But I've heard other eyewitnesses tell me that it's just jet black in many cases.
Okay. I did notice that it was this creature was black. The whole thing was black. There was no yellow. There was no just black. And I did notice that underneath its eye was like when people get like bags under their eyes or whatever, and there's like 2 or 3, I would say probably 3 rows of skin that was kind of loose under the eye.
Okay.
And I kind of was a little bit wigged out by looking at its eye. So I didn't look at it for very long, but
Okay.
there was no feathers, no fur, which I thought was kind of interesting because
is.
I thought it was going to be like a bat, you know, because it was like a bat in many ways. And then the body itself, definitely noticed that it didn't have any feathers. But when it got really close, I kept looking at the tummy part of it, and it didn't have any fur. It was the same skin that was in between the wings that was on the body.
Okay.
So,
Catherine, I'd like to have us all jump in now. I
okay.
think this is important. Let me start off by saying this to all who are listening and watching. There is supposedly new information saying or suggesting that these creatures have feathers or fur on their body. Now, I'm extremely hesitant to jump on that bandwagon because if this creature is covered in fur, we're not just talking like a bat. We're talking about on the wings as well. If it is covered in fur, it will have a hard time flying. This is not a bird. It's a reptilian creature. They have different lung capacities. They're built differently. They're biomechanics. Birds can survive really well because they have the lung capacity to hold the saturation of when they get wet. Okay? Reptiles can't do that. It's not the same thing. So if it was weighted down by the water, the saturation on its fur, it would have a low survival rate. So I'm not seeing that there. Plus, all the eyewitness testimony that comes forward is saying these creatures are smooth skinned, just like a bat. I am willing to accept the feather theory, but I'm not seeing substantial evidence for it. And I need to see more than just rock quarries in China or Spain, where they're paying people to counterfeit this stuff.
Yep.
You can make your own amber feather if you want to, or tail of a dinosaur. Okay, so that's my viewpoint when it comes to this feathers situation. And it is a bit of a conundrum because it's a split. Not all paleontologists are on board with this concept, because if you just look at the biomechanics, it doesn't add up. Anyway, would anyone like to ask a question of Catherine?
How far from the zoo were you when you had this sighting?
That's right, because there is a zoo out
on the
there.
north side of the peninsula or the south side?
Do we have the map so I can show? Okay,
And folks, you'll be seeing this as well.
the zoo is a structure that is more towards the middle, and we were out just above the beach.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know how far that is away from the zoo, but it's you drive through the whole thing. It's very pretty.
Right.
And we didn't go. I can't remember. I don't think we went to the zoo. We might have gone to the zoo, and then we were just on our way out.
Okay.
So it was right above.
That cliff there, did that have any caves or overhangs where this creature might have spent time?
I don't know.
How high was the cliff?
I don't really know that either. I'm sorry.
And where's Vashon Island?
It's right over here.
Okay.
It's right over there.
There's a lot of factors involved there.
I've never been down. I've never been down on below that cliff. I've only been on the top of it.
Okay.
I don't even know if they allowed people to have access down there.
Was it as high up as in Depot Bay when you're going down there? You know, there's the when you go around the coves, that distance up and down. Would you say it's higher than that?
I don't know where Depot Bay
Okay.
is. I'm sorry. This is
She's further distance
Yes.
from Depot Bay and
Yeah.
what we're familiar with. I do want to make it known that it is true that there is a zoo in that area. Now, some people are going to ask this question. Perhaps you just saw a bird, okay? But again, I bring this up over and over again. You will know a bird when you see it. You can see clearly distinctive feathers on the avian type. Clearly, we're dealing with something that didn't have feathers.
Right.
Okay? She clearly made out a positive identification of something more exotic, in my opinion.
From 13 feet away at one point. The closest.
Exactly.
Yeah. So 2 questions. You were talking about the eye. How big was the eye? Was it the size of a teacup saucer?
let me think if I can.
Nice side eye, yeah. Would you
About
say
the size of a baseball.
Yep.
But that I would say definitely bigger than our eyes.
Did you lock eyes with it? Eye with it?
It wasn't looking at me.
Was not looking at you. Okay.
And I didn't want to keep looking at it because then I thought I would call
Yeah,
attention to
yeah.
myself. So I just looked at it real briefly.
In your opinion, what was it doing up there? Was it resting? Was it getting nest material? What do you think the point of it landing there was? Was it looking out over? What do you think it was doing?
The only sound I heard was that it landed. So I didn't hear any animal or like it was after something to eat, or I didn't hear any babies
Nothing.
or anything like that. So I don't know what it was doing up there.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't tell me what he was doing up there.
Right?
Let me ask this one now. This is important. Okay, you said it landed.
Hmm.
So you didn't see it land? Did you see it coming in for a landing?
Yes.
Okay. So when it was coming in, what were the feet like? Were they were they below? Were they tucked back?
They were kind of being drug along back when it was flying, you know, and then when it came up to land, they became more vertical.
Okay.
And it was I think it was kind of maybe trying to slow down, I don't know, from flying.
Okay.
It slowed down before it landed, so it didn't just plow right into the side of the cliff.
Okay.
It was breaking itself, if that makes any sense.
Yes, and I'm going to make a point here. Tell me about the wings as well. What did they start to do? Were they sticking out?
They were. They kind of rotated a little bit. When it went vertical, the whole thing kind of went. When it was flying, it was more horizontal, and then it sort of turned. When it was breaking, probably, to stop itself from being so fast.
Yeah.
I don't know if am I making any sense?
It's like
it
an
rotated.
airplane.
Yep. The wings rotated, and then I could see the body, the front of the body better. I could only see kind of the side of the body before when it was flying, when it was horizontal, but when it came right in front of us, you could see it break, and then you could see the whole body.
Wow.
Pete, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm interested in its neck. They often draw the picture of the animal, or in the movies, where the neck is stretched out and the body is stretched out, so it's like a long airplane. Was it like that?
Or was it curved back over the body?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out where the head was in proportion to the body. Was the head aligned with the body and the neck and everything like that, or was there any kind of shape to a neck?
The neck looked kind of loose, like I wouldn't say as loose as a pelican, but there was skin that was loose under the neck. It was like the beak, and then it wasn't taut.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Is that what you're asking me?
Well, that helps me understand a little better. We saw some things that I'm not going to talk about here, but it's hard to tell exactly what the neck is doing where we were because of all the skin and everything.
Catherine, was this a long neck or was it a short neck?
Mm.
Can you remember back that far?
I'm not sure what I drew a picture of it, and
where's the picture?
As
I'll
opposed
present it.
as opposed to the it looks like a pteranodon. I don't know.
Let me come back to that. We'll come back to that when we start to look at the image and start to evaluate. Sometimes there's different variants of pterosaurs, lots of different ones. Let me pull some that I'd like to be able to show you.
Okay.
All right. Catherine, from this list, this is a small list. There's over 150 different species of pterosaurs, okay?
Mm.
And they range in size and small to very large. I'm looking at these crests, all right? Which one stands out to you the most?
The second one from the top on the right.
Right here.
Yep.
Okay.
But it seemed to me like there was no curve to it. It just went straight back from the head, the beak, everything was just straight. You know what I mean? And so I don't know the way that's positioned. That looks about the right size, and the fact that it's the pointiest one without any kind of curve going on.
So this guy had a very straight head crest.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't curve like some hammerhead versions. Dr. Wincombe used to say, he used to call them hammerhead Ropens, North American hammerhead Ropens. So this one was just a straight head crest.
Very
and you're
straight.
saying the beak didn't have that curve either? It was straight from one end to the other?
I didn't notice a curve. It just seemed like it was very, straight.
Wow.
Just all the way from the front to the back.
Okay. All right. So that gives us a nice understanding about this head crest. And you mentioned the size. How big of this head crest? Could you estimate again?
I would say that in the beak part, that's not counting the head or the throat. That part, I would say, was probably just the beak alone. My husband was 6 feet tall, so that was a 6 foot beak, and I think the bony crest was more than half and less than 3/4. I want to say 5/8 of the size of the beak, the length of the beak.
Okay.
So I think I did the math somewhere, and I can't remember the
That's all right.
results of the math.
It's large.
It was huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Usually,
It probably still is somewhere.
Yeah.
Would that be the size of an adult one? Full adult
Well,
one?
here's where it gets interesting. Look, I'm a strong believer in adaptation, okay? I think there's something else going on with these creatures in order for them to continue to thrive. We'll get to that later. The normal size for a pteranodon is about 19, 20 feet in wingspan.
Oh, okay.
They supposedly haven't found any fossils that are averaging this size of 35 feet. That's ginormous. We're talking Quetzalcoatlus.
It's double the size on average, almost.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
It's very unique. It tells me something about this guy. Maybe he's migrating. They have a large migrational pattern. So, do you think that maybe the size is questionable?
No,
You strongly believe it was 35 feet.
definitely.
Okay. Now, you mentioned also that you are you're involved in real estate, right?
No.
No?
I wasn't. I'm in banking.
Okay, banking.
Yeah.
So you're a numbers person.
Yep.
Okay. That's important.
Yes, it is.
Okay, because clearly we have someone who could make a good, positive evaluation on size. All right. Perfect. According to the skeptics, they're going to say, that's not what you saw, Catherine. They'll either say it's a bird, or there's another theory. You saw a radio-controlled flyer. All right? Now, I've gone looking at some of these radio-controlled flyers that you can make out of cardboard. They look pretty good,
Yeah.
but they don't look like this. All right?
Right.
Not only that, if you were to invest in something like this, it would cost thousands of dollars to create.
Oh, yeah.
So, do you think that someone is just out there randomly making pterosaurs just to spook people or
One at a
confuse
time?
people?
Yeah.
Yeah, one at a time. I'm not buying that either. But let me ask you this question. Did you hear any kind of motorized sound by chance?
Completely silent.
Like
It
stealthy?
It flew completely silently. Absolute silence.
These are stealth creatures.
Yeah.
Very elusive. And in my personal opinion, nocturnal, like a bat,
Mm-hmm.
not spooked by people easily. They will come out if they want to, depending if their food source is scarce or whatever. And it was not bothered by her presence or her husband's presence at all.
The experts here, what would be a reason an animal this large, so this is obviously an apex of its own species, would be out during the daytime when they are nocturnal primarily?
When we were in New Guinea, there was a cyclone that came on the day that we got there, and for 2 weeks, the wind blew, rain came down. We could not fly up to the village we wanted to go to. We heard from some of the older villagers who had seen these creatures that they come out after a storm. Why? Because during the storm, they're holed up in their cave or wherever it is they're staying. They can't go out and get food. So as soon as the weather gets better, then they're going to be out and they'll compromise and fly during the day, not just during the night, because they're ravished.
Right.
So I don't know if there was any bad weather up there immediately prior to that or not. What time of year was it that you were there?
It was the summertime,
August, correct?
probably
Okay.
August,
It was
I would say.
One of the hotter months.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was late afternoon, And we live in Puyallup, and this is in Tacoma. So we could have different weather where I live than where they were. So
Was
I'm sorry, I
99 a
can't.
dry season? Was it like really dry?
There is no dry season in Washington. Not in Tacoma.
No, I think
No, but if there was one, it would be probably in August. That's probably the hottest month of the year.
What time of day?
It was late afternoon. I want to say about between 3 and 4, maybe. It was
What's
about
broad daylight.
How about temperature?
It was nice out. It wasn't raining. It wasn't cold. It
Like
wasn't
today?
windy. Not as hot.
Okay.
Salem is hotter. I don't know, maybe say 75, 70.
Was
something
there
like-
much of a wind?
I didn't notice one.
Could you feel the wind when you saw it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break. Give some shout out to our local companies. You are listening to the Ropen Radio Network, broadcasting from the heart of Oregon. We'll be right back with Catherine Fuller. Don't go away. Hi, I'm Jacob Guerra, lead investigator and radio host for the Ropen Network. Dinosaurs represent a force in our world, inasmuch as so many young and old people alike are curious and deeply interested in knowing more about these creatures. How preserved are they? Are they simply desiccated, or have they degraded into unrecognizable former proteins? Are bone soft cells the only kind of dinosaur cells that exist? Can the cells be cultured, brought back to vitality and growth? Are dinosaur cells found around the globe? Are they really millions of years old? Or are they young, every one of them? These and many other questions might be answered as we progress in our endeavor to locate and characterize dinosaur soft tissue from around the Earth. If you would like to learn more, be sure to check out Dinosaur Soft Tissue Research Institute, dstri.org. Receive a free book and stay up to date with articles and events. The Ropen Network would like to acknowledge the amazing research provided by Dr. Mark Armitage and his soft tissue discovery. Go to Dinosaur Soft Tissue Research Institute.org today.
Want to see some dinosaurs?
Unbelievable.
Want to see Eden? Come on, it's almost time for the show. This is the Creation Museum.
Prepare to believe.
Your exclusive home for cryptozoological talk, the RRN, Salem, Oregon. Let's seek the truth. Welcome back. This is the Ropen Radio Network, Cryptozoological Talk. We are broadcasting from the heart of Oregon, Salem's capital. I'm joined today by Catherine Fuller from Astoria, Oregon. She's going over her testimony of what she saw in 1999, Point Defiance, Washington. Potentially a scary encounter, but she was probably just more amazed at what she saw than anything. Catherine, let's go through some extra things here, okay? I want to point out. Jeff was mentioning at the break that the use of measuring, that you actually decided to do some measuring of your own. Tell me about that.
Well, I have a big measuring tape that you can measure. I think it's for real estate and actually measuring the length of your property. And I knew that I had to be more precise with my eyewitness account, and that it would help. Would help you and other scientists figure out what's going on with the animal population if I was more specific. So I went outside prior to talking to you and eyeballed it and tried to remember exactly how far away this was and how long it was, how big it was, all of that. And I used a really long tape measure to do that.
Okay.
It's a big circular one. It's about this big.
Okay.
So I could be more precise about how far away it was when it landed, what its wingspan was, how close it was to us. I measured all those things.
Okay.
And I'm fairly confident in my measurements, so I could relay that to you in a more accurate way.
All right. Appreciate that too. Let's take a look at the geographical location of Point Defiance real fast, okay? Point Defiance Park is a 640-acre urban oasis in Tacoma, Washington, nestled in the old-growth forest and surrounded by two sides of salt water, Puget Sound. Puget Sound is important, okay? The park is one of the jewels of the city. It includes gardens, historic buildings, a pond, wildlife, beaches, and trails. Point Defiance Park began as a military reservation after the Wilkes expedition visited Puget Sound in the 1840s to map the bays and estuaries. Wilkes is thought to have said that with a fort position at that point and at Gig Harbor across the Narrows, one could defy the word. The high cliffs and prominent location were never used for military operations. In 1888, President Grover Cleveland authorized its use as public park. By 1890, the streetcars brought visitors to wander along the gardens. Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium is a 1.1 mile, 4-minute drive from the Pearl Street entrance to Point Defiance Park, roughly 15 minutes walking. I bring up Puget Sound for a reason. Over the years, I've had a great opportunity to speak with the natives in Washington. They are familiar with the flying reptiles. Not all of them. Like the Klickitat is. Okay? The Yakima tribes are. They have a different word for them. I'm not going to say it because I'm going to butcher it. But they're aware of their presence. I find that really interesting. But even looking at the history of the Thunderbird, okay, the Thunderbird legends. Virtually every Native American culture has stories of a giant magical bird, which most call the Thunderbird. The name comes from the sound the bird's wings make when in full flight, like thunderclaps. The Thunderbird wings, it was said, were larger than 2 canoes, and the feathers the size of canoe paddles. Their eyes glowed red, and lightning shot out of their claws. At least 2 Thunderbirds flew into Washington. One in the Cascade Mountains and the other in the Olympic Mountains of the Puget Sound. Now, let's get something very clear here. There are 2 variations of Thunderbirds, according to the natives. There are the feathered, large avian type. We're talking massive. And it goes all the way back to the 1500s of their presence. Big wingspans. But here's where it gets interesting. They're also known as being the pterosaur. They're depicted as flying reptiles with the head crest. Okay? No feathers. Another variation of Thunderbirds. So you see there's a connection here. Why would Native Americans make something like this up? If anything, they're very credible about their information, and we need to take it very seriously. It all comes down to these sightings. One that Catherine had. Very large creature near Puget Sound. Think about that for a moment. I find that very interesting. Are you gentlemen familiar with the Thunderbird legends?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jeff
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't like to say myth. I just like to say legend because that's what they are. They're legend. They're not myth. I do believe that avian types have been seen today. You go over to the Rio Grande Valley, and people have sightings of not just pterosaurs, but also of large birds, and we're talking very large birds. Even William Gibbons actually mentioned something to me, too, that one of his eyewitnesses who came forward, who now lives in Portland, you might want to talk to him as soon as we get the name, described that him and his brother were crossing the border when they were both attacked by a pterosaur. He looked back and saw his brother being devoured by one of them. And this is the type we would see with teeth, which would be the ornithochirus, something like that along those lines. Again, more eyewitness testimony, something that I consider to be very credible. People from all walks of life who are seeing these things, they're still roaming our skies. And then you get the naysayers who say, well, why haven't I seen one? Well, how much do you venture out? I've had people who have said that they are avid hunters. And they said, I don't subscribe to the Sasquatch at all, or these pterosaur encounters. But yet, what do you know? They saw one, because they continue to make their treks outdoors. Very exciting stuff, wouldn't you say?
Very exciting.
Yeah.
In your research, did you happen to come across a fellow from Yakima, Washington, this was probably 15 or 20 years ago, who had a encounter? He was at a picnic in some park on the edge of Yakima, and they had what they thought was I'm very sure it was a pterosaur that came and landed in a field next to the park. It was a pretty extensive description that he had of it, and I don't have all the details. I could probably get them, but...
This one doesn't sound familiar at all. No. New to me. Yeah.
Was this in a cornfield?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Just the fact that you two are here, Peter and Milt, only confirms more about these creatures in Washington. For some odd reason, they're not too fond of Oregon. I don't get a lot of reports of Oregon. I do get some over by the Columbia River Gorge, but very few. Yeah.
Well, that would be a place for them.
That is a place, yes.
With all of those cliffs and overhangs and caves and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. And for the research you've done along Yakima, you're very familiar with that river system. How many variations of fish are there that could be a feeding frenzy for these creatures? But you also mentioned, too, I think this is important, that they also go after the bird type, like the nightjars.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we've heard them feeding on birds, night birds that feed on insects. I didn't think they would. I thought they just ate fish. That made sense to me until we saw these pops of light right over the river and the screams of the birds. We couldn't see. It was dark enough that you couldn't see the birds or the pterosaur. But then these two pops and the screams of the birds. It had to be feeding on the birds. Otherwise, the birds wouldn't be that excited about it. And what would they? That's enough fish aren't up there, so
right.
Something's going on up there. So they must have been feeding on these little. Well, they weren't small birds, about the size of a pigeon, something like that.
Yep. Yeah. And folks, if you want to see more about this, I highly recommend you check out the Ropen River documentary. You will also find Peter and Milt's work on dinosaur discovery on YouTube and all the social network hotspots. Please take a look at them. They're very important. A lot of research there. It spans years, and it's very credible. And gentlemen, if these creatures are nocturnal, I think they're also subterranean. I think they will find a place to hide wherever they can. But I really pay a lot of attention and give credence to the mountains in Washington, such as Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, and I think Mount Rainier as well. Maybe even Mount Hood. Maybe they'll venture that far. I've had reports of them coming out of the mountainsides of Mount Adams. people who have been hiking these mountains and said, hey, I saw something large. It almost looked like a bat, and it's pterosaur-like. So there could be something to them in their habitat. They're holding out in the mountainsides, the cliffs. They're finding places to stay until a certain time of the day, and they venture out. You got the nearby Yakima River. They're feeding out there. Other places where they're being seen. The real question I ask is how many people have seen these things and are not coming forward? Because who are they going to talk to?
Well, when we stopped, there was a period where about every trip that we took over to the Yakima, we would see these lights, these bioluminescent lights, so we knew we were seeing the pterosaurs. And then the sightings seemed to die down. We didn't see very many. But it was about that time we started hearing about all these people seeing UFOs on the south side of Mount Adams. And I asked a couple of those people, well, were the UFOs higher than the horizon? Were they above the mountains? Well, a lot of them weren't. They were moving around below the horizon. So they weren't UFOs. They were more than likely pterosaurs.
Better jump in here because I think you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be asking, what do you mean lights? They're not familiar with the fact that these creatures potentially glow. I don't know if all of them do, but I think there's a good amount of them that can, potentially. So we're talking about bioluminescence. Okay, it's not the same as biofluorescence. They're two distinct. But this is a method in which they communicate or warn off, something like that, along those lines. Can you guys tell us about that?
Well, I had no idea that pterosaurs were even in the United States, and I didn't know anything about bioluminescence until we went up there. A friend got in touch with us, and we went up. Milt can tell the same story. We've told it 1,000 times. There was a tree that a fellow named Johnny said that there was he saw a pterosaur, and then another day, I guess 2 days later, he was driving the same early in the morning trip, and he saw it in the same tree. Wow.
Daylight.
In daylight, and so we went up there. Milt convinced me to go up there. I thought it's a bird. I had no. I was sure it was a cormorant. It was going to be something like that. Mm-hmm. And there he showed us the tree, and we looked at the tree, and there was a cormorant on the limb, right where he said it was. and it was, of course, it was kind of like, no, that isn't it. I mean, there's a bird there, but it wasn't that. My mind just went, phew, I'm gone. And so we went back. In the evening, just before the light went out, before the sun went down. And we were looking at the tree, and this light comes right out of the tree, flying away from us, out of this tree. We're talking about 30 feet of light. I mean, bright light. We're talking something like you'd see with a welder's torch, only it's about so big around. Wouldn't you say? And it just came right up out of the tree and headed off down the river, or actually up the river.
And then the light went out.
Huh?
Then the light went out.
And then the light went out. Well, we couldn't. We just looked at each other like, "Did we just see that? Did you see that?" We couldn't believe it.
Pete and I and my son were all three. The first thing we did after we saw the light, I think we were all spellbound until it was gone, and then we looked at each other. And we wanted to check our wits. We said, did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. Well, 3 of us saw it, so you know what the Bible says about that. If 2 or 3,
There shall I be, right?
Be established, we'll establish something, yes.
Let me dive in that a little bit more here.
And that was just the introduction to this concept of light.
Right.
And if we trace this back, is there anything in Scripture that can actually point us in that right direction? Yes. One that always sticks out to me is the book of Isaiah. It mentions the fiery flying serpent. Mm-hmm. Again, it doesn't refer to snake. It's not always snake. It's reptile. Okay. You're going to have a lot of people who probably disagree with this, especially those who read the NIV or NAS, because it was removed because they didn't understand it.
Right.
But then again, it's there. They had to go into the lands and they had to fight off the fiery flying serpent. Why were they called fiery? Doesn't make any sense. There isn't any snake or reptile that breathes fire. No. But there are animals, creatures that do glow. Tasmanian devils glow now, but that's biofluorescence, not bioluminescence. Okay? So this kind of just blows everybody's mind. If you don't go looking and digging and understanding Scripture and what the meaning of all that is, it's going to be right over your head.
Yeah.
It's not going to make any sense. But then as you start to read it, it comes alive. And you realize there's more to our world than just what we see every day. We have to have eyes to see and ears to hear.
And if you don't think that there's not a concerted effort to suppress this, there's a couple of good instances that has been caught out. Number one was the footprints we were talking about earlier, where they found dinosaur footprints with human footprints, and then an evolutionary got caught going out there and smashing them up. And then in the 90s, there was a professor up in Montana that got red blood cells out of Triceratop horn, and it was reduplicated by like a lot of scientists. They came down and started getting them fired and everything, and a lot of them renounced and said it was never there. But the evidence is there. And what I'm saying is it's whenever this comes out, there's a concerted effort to smash that and discredit it, even though the proof is there. So you can imagine the amount of people that don't come forward for fear of that. Yep. Now, why do they do that? It's to push like you just said, the eyes to see, ears to hear, is to push the evolution narrative. It's to go against God, is what it ultimately is, because this proves so much more, the Bible, the truth of it, the young earth, all of that.
Catherine, why did you come forward?
Well, initially my husband didn't want us to report it. He didn't want me to talk about it in the car on the way home in front of the kids. He said it would scare them. And when we got home and the kids were in bed, and I said, we've really got to call somebody and tell them what we saw, because this thing could hurt somebody. I mean, there's children on that beach, right around the corner from where that thing landed. And it wasn't dead when we left. It was still alive. So things that are alive have to eat, and we don't know what it eats, and it's big enough to carry away a kid. It could have definitely killed one of us. So it's our responsibility to tell. And I felt, he said, well, who are you going to call? I said, well, let's start with the police. They get calls about everything. They'll know how to direct us or what to do, maybe call animal control. Or we could just call the zoo, for Pete's sake. I mean, it was
right there. So
yeah. I thought, well, they have things to maybe a net, or they have to wrestle the tiger, or all.
You were trying to think of things that what you could do to take action.
Yeah, right. And he just said, no one is going to believe you. They will make fun of you, and the police will not do anything about it. And I said, we cannot be the only people that saw this thing flying over Puget Sound in broad daylight. I said, they've got to have more than one call about this. Honestly, I mean, there along the coast there's all kinds of people have houses on the coast, and it was a beautiful day. They probably were, a lot of them on their decks, looking out, or maybe, somebody else had to see this.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried that even if we are the only people that say something, we need to do it. It's our response. It's our social responsibility. And he said, don't do it. What are you going to do now? Be the lady that saw the pterodactyl? That's what you're going to be now? And I said, okay.
Put you in the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
There you go.
He said, okay. And I just obeyed my husband and he said, don't say anything. And so I didn't. And I'm no longer married. And I have felt a burden because I never said anything about this. I felt bad about not saying anything. And if, even if I would like to find out if the thing flying around ever hurt anybody or did anything, I will feel kind of responsible for not saying something about it, to be honest. And so this feels kind of a relief, even though it's not there anymore. They're finally coming out and saying something. I feel like I'm free to do that now.
Yeah.
And I think it also supports the younger theory. You know, I've been to college, and I was forced to take evolution to get a degree.
Yeah.
And
Indoctrination.
for a long time, I believed that there was some way to infuse evolution and the Bible together, and because of what I was taught, and I didn't know enough about the Bible or enough about science and creation theory to be able to refute the theory of evolution. And now, after I've gotten a little bit older and wiser and researched that a little bit more, I realize that the theory of evolution is just,
It doesn't coexist.
it not only does it not coexist, but it's not scientific.
No.
And there is zero proof that there was any cross speciation. I think that's what you call it. I'm not sure. The scientists can tell me. There's no fossil evidence. There's no evidence at all that one species changed into another one. We don't have any proof for that.
No missing links.
Well,
We
it's
have-
it's become more of a religion to those who support evolution.
Well, they just have to take a huge leap of faith without any scientific evidence. And
Blind
they-
faith.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing, and everything they do find supports what the Bible says. All the scientific evidence that they found supports the Bible. And I would say that if it hasn't, science hasn't caught up with the Bible all the way, I'm sure. But I would believe more in the Bible than I would.
Is
The
there
theory
any
of
anxiety-
evolution.
Is there any anxiety associated with coming forward? Is there any apprehension? I know
Some-
you did it. Yeah. What is it?
A little bit when I started talking about how big that thing was, and it could have put its beak over my husband. There's a little bit of anxiety associated with that.
I mean, are you worried that people are going to harass you or
No.
none of this?
I'm too old for that nonsense. I don't care. I haven't cared what people thought since I was 13.
There you go.
So as I get older, I just think, well, everybody has the right to their opinion, but if it's not based in seeing anything, they can't disprove to me that I
didn't see something.
that I saw it. So, just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
That's right.
Let me put some wheels on your idea about the safety. In Umboy Island, which sits between the island of New Britain and the main island of Papua New Guinea, it's a rather small island. They have had apparently wide numbers of pteranodons and pterosaurs there. And the natives have said that they have picked children up, small people, and since the cliffs are so steep, they just pick someone up, move a few feet over to where they're 1,000 feet above the ground. They drop them, and then they go down and eat them after they've died. So they have a great fear of the pterosaurs. And Harriet Scott said that when she was walking along the edge of the cliff on that trail, and that pterosaur was soaring out there next to her, as she walked down the trail, it kept getting closer and closer to her. She had visions of that happening with her. And she took off running when she got down to her other son's house. Within a few feet of it, she took off running for the house and the safety of the hut. So it's a very real thing that you were talking about. I don't know if that particular one would have done that, but if it was that big, it seems like a real possibility.
If it was a big animal, it can't just be subsisting on minnows.
Well, there's a lot of fish out in Puget Sound, so it could be that it doesn't eat terrestrial animals, but I don't know. It could do that too, as Pete was saying.
I just from gathering information from our different sources, it seems like it's not omnivorous. It's kind of a cross between vulture and a raptor. It can be both.
As far as its diet.
Scavenger, yeah.
It can kill and it can eat killed. So it doesn't really care.
Right.
Talking to Samuel on New Britain, he was saying how they would, like a vulture, sit on a tree or near a tree or up on a cliff over a little pond that was just beyond our viewing. And he said he watched it as it would then dive on little pigs that would come to the water. Kind of like a vulture wouldn't do that, but a vulture would eat whatever would carrion it could find. And that's another thing that they said when they had these hurricanes. That's when you'd see the animal come out looking for dead animals. Easy pickings.
Yeah.
What is the consensus on the main diet, though?
Fish.
It is fish. And where did that come from? That they say, okay, we think this is the main diet based on
what they've
First
seen.
I heard of it was on Amboy Island. The island is basically just a big volcanic mountain that sticks out. It's very high for as small as the island is, and they say that they swoop down over the ocean, grab fish out, and everywhere we were in Papua New Guinea, there was always a stream nearby with fish in it. And so it seems like it's hard to find any place. The tree up in Yakima, on the Yakima River hung out over the river, and the branch that Pete was talking about goes down so it could sit 10 feet over the water and just watch the fish down below and pick out whatever one. It was a buffet.
Exactly.
You know?
To add to that as well, it's also paleontology work. As they've dissected the bones, come to realization that most of these creatures, they say, especially a pteranodon type, like to hang out by the ocean. They wait for the fish or whatever. Yeah. Excellent. Also, to mention their gullet, they're underneath their jawline, which would prove to them that, hey, these are fishers. Yep. Okay, that's what they would prefer. But hey, we're in different times, so whatever they're looking for, they're going to get. Yep. As I've mentioned, they will attack humans, but it's very rare. I don't get many calls about them attacking humans, except for one gentleman who said he had his arm ripped off by one of them.
I heard a story when we were there about, I think it was two Papua New Guineans who saw a pterodon on the beach. Yep. And they decided to attack it.
Oh.
And, well, it didn't end well. No one died, but you can't. It won't work.
Right. Okay. Let's go back for a moment here. Catherine, did you think maybe to notify the park rangers by chance?
No, I know that the zoo is part of the Parks Department, so that seemed like the same kind of thing. That was my first inclination on the way out. As we were driving away, I said, let's stop by the office and give them a heads up,
Okay.
There's a pteranodon on the premises. And Rick said, nope, we're not doing that. Yeah. So.
Okay, so what about the Audubon Society? Everybody says, oh, notify the bird agencies. Well, I want to make it very clear that not everybody's going to think of that, okay? And some would also say, why didn't you pull out your camera? Do you really think they may have had a camera at the time? We're living in an age of smartphones where things are getting better as far as seeing things that are out there. Okay, that's good. This is pre-smartphone era. So nobody can just whip it out and say, boom. And also, think about this too, folks. If you see something this amazing, you're not going to be able to gain your composure.
Nope.
You're going to be fixated on it. And you're not going to want to let go of that sighting unless you're trained to be ready to go, which most people are not. It's not simple to just whip out the phone and take a picture. Okay, it's difficult. I think everybody here would agree on that too.
Well, that's why I didn't have my camera in New Guinea. I took it with me down to the hut where I had my lunch. But then when we had the sighting, I forgot to go grab it. I thought I had left it at the lookout. So that shows you how you panic,
Right. As Catherine, when she saw this creature, she was trying to study it the best she could so she could come back and give potentially a full, detailed analysis of this creature so we could understand it. And I'm glad she fixated on it for the longest time that she could. You mentioned 5 minutes?
I would say that it probably it wasn't any longer than 5 minutes.
Okay.
It might have been shorter than 5 minutes, but
Okay.
time was so suspended.
Standing still.
Yeah, time was just kind of drawn out when you see something like this. You're transfixed. You're sort of removed from time, and so I can't be positive that it wasn't less than 5 minutes, but it wasn't more than 5 minutes. It didn't take very long for that thing to fly all the way, or glide, really, from over by Vashon all the way to the point where it landed. It wasn't a very long time. I didn't want to miss a second of looking at it because I knew that
Who would want to?
I wasn't smart enough to be afraid of it at the time. My curiosity was overriding my self-preservation. It wasn't very smart. My husband was being really quiet, and I think he was definitely more stressed out than I was at the time. I was just staring at it. He was probably just thinking, we need to get in the car and get out of here. But I was
Did he bring it up again later on?
No. It was kind of as I understood it when he said, I don't want you to talk about this in front of the kids. I don't want them to be afraid. You're not going to tell anybody about it. And not only that, when I said, well, I think we have a responsibility to do this, I said, well, if I just came forward by myself, that would be really different than if you and I both said that we saw it. That's kind of a check and balance thing. When two people say they've seen the same thing, like I think that abduction thing with the aliens with Barney and his wife, I think it's Barney. You know what I'm talking about?
The hills.
That holds a lot more credibility than you do if you just see something by yourself. And he says, well, I'm not going to tell anybody that I saw it. I said, thanks a lot, honey. But he was there. And I took the lie detector test, so.
Which we're coming to eventually here. Real fast, this only confirms something else as well. Okay, he's scared.
Mm-hmm.
If this was a radio-controlled flyer or some sort of, I know I probably bring that up. You're going to hear that a lot. Okay?
That's all right.
Just to forewarn you.
Just
if it was, you would hear something coming from it, some sort of, even a drone. You have a slight hum, depending on the distance or whatever. You can still hear that thing pretty well. But he was scared. So he saw something of flesh and blood that scared him, and he never wanted to talk about it again.
Nope.
And let's remember, this is 1999. For crying out loud, the cell phones that were around and the battery packs were huge. They didn't have the technology.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember. I had one.
If you had a remote-controlled, if it was a remote-controlled flyer of this 35 foot long, imagine the batteries that had to be on that.
You had a bunny ear on that thing.
It wouldn't be able to fly, It would be too heavy. I mean, the amount of money it would cost to make something.
Just to fool somebody.
In 99,
And to point out, my husband and I both grew up in nature. I mean, I grew up walking through the woods to get anywhere.
Okay.
I wasn't ignorant of what creatures look like and
birds
the
especially.
Sounds they make and birds and all the.
I'm glad you pointed that out. It's important.
Of Washington. I grew up hiking and all the time, and the place where we lived was they didn't clear cut everything, so I had to walk through woods to get anywhere every day. So, and my husband lived in the country, so he was familiar with not only with farm animals but also with the fish and the coast and all the creatures around there in Bremerton where he grew up. So we're not ignorant about the difference between an animal and a machine.
Okay.
And I think back in those days, I'm not sure they even had those drones yet flying around.
Well, not drones, no.
They might have had some
Military.
kind of hologram thing because, you know, they had that way back at Disneyland at the Haunted Mansion or whatever.
Well, even
long
for the
time
civilians
ago.
to be able to use it would have been extremely expensive.
On a cliff. Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, this thing was completely silent. There was no sound at all.
No screech from the creature.
No sound.
Okay.
Its mouth stayed closed, and it not even the flapping of the wings. Yeah, because it wasn't moving its wings. And I think even if it did, I'm not sure that it would make a noise. You know, there's no feathers on it. And I think that the flapping kind of, isn't that part of feathers, that getting caught in the feathers or something?
A little bit, not necessarily though.
Yeah, it was totally silent. There was just not one sound at all.
Is that typical of eyewitness accounts? Silence, no sounds.
Not always.
Okay.
Sometimes there is something that's heard, but it's rare.
What kind of a noise does it make?
Well, I can make the sound.
You can make the sound?
Oh,
I
geez.
believe so.
Please do.
Something like that.
Wow.
Really?
And the way this happened is Pete and I were sitting on the Yakima River, and just to the upstream side, to our right, there was a lot of small brush and trees in there, and we couldn't see upriver too much. But across the river, there was a river bank and the cliff that goes up maybe a couple 100 feet. And I saw the light coming down the cliff toward the river off to our right. And I figured that's going to land on the river, but I don't know whether it's going to be on our side or on the other side. So after the light went out, I didn't see any more, so I thought it's landed down there somewhere. So I'm going to go down there and see if I can see it. And after I got started down through the thicket, I started hearing that sound. And it was way louder than I just made.
Yeah, that's right.
Way louder. It was deafening. And I just tried to creep along, be as quiet as I could. And then when I thought I was almost there, it stopped. And I knew that it knew that I was there.
Oh, wow.
And so I waited a while to see if it would start up again. It didn't. So I started walking back and finally got back to Pete. And Pete says, once again, we blew it. We could have had our camcorder on and at least got the sound.
Yeah.
You know, if we got camcorder capture sounds as well as video, you know.
I can't make that sound, but when I heard that sound, the next morning, I went down into the exact area where the sound was coming from, because it was kind of a bunch of trees and, you know, brush. And I said, listen to the guys, we're back where, you know, we were when we heard it. I'm going to yell as loud as I can. I want you to see if you can hear me. And I did. I screamed, and they could barely hear me. So I did a little research. I can scream maybe at 70 decibels.
Okay.
Okay. This had to have been probably double that. It had to be like 140 decibels. Wow. That's a jet
amazing.
engine.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a jet engine.
Wow.
You're not the only ones to describe that. I've heard it from other programs that people have said that it's been that loud. That's a powerful sound that they can emit.
Do you think the bony crest has something to do with the cacophony?
That'll be a theory for later on.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
No, we're fine. But I'm glad you brought that up. Let me bring this up before we go to our next break, okay? The legs. Paleontologists have speculated that they are too fragile to lift much of anything. The bones of the pterosaurs are very fragile. This is why we don't get complete skeletons all the time. And we only have 20 paleontologists working on pterosaurs this current time. Okay, 20. That's very low.
Yeah.
But that only proves how much they don't know about them. I mean, I'm glad that they're studying the bones. Good. But if they're not looking for an ability, a light ability, then they're never going to go finding it, or they're never going to discover it.
Right.
If somebody brings it up, they think it's ludicrous to even mention the thought of bioluminescence from these creatures. As was mentioned by David, I forget his last name, Dave Hone. or one of the other gentlemen. He said there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that these creatures can glow. Well, did you go looking for it? That's what I want to know. And I asked this of Mount Blanco Fossil Museum's Joe Taylor, the late Joe Taylor. And he says he says nobody has ever gone looking, truly gone looking. He's like, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to start looking. But then he passed away. Yeah.
But these guys have seen them glowing. I mean, isn't that part of science, is to trust what you see? Isn't that
observation's part of it?
Field study? Isn't that where you go out in the field?
Well, they would also say that being an eyewitness, you're not scientific at all. Right. Your testimony's not scientific.
I think I'm pretty scientific.
All right, gentlemen, let's take our next break. You're listening to Cryptozoological Talk on the RRN Ropen Radio Network. We'll be right back with Catherine Fuller.
Hey everyone, Matt Osborne with Operation Underground Railroad. We are running a campaign to raise funds for a cyber crimes lab on the campus of Indiana State University. This lab will be furnished with state-of-the-art equipment and will give students real-world experience in performing intelligence collection and analysis on human traffickers and human trafficking rings. We piloted a similar program on the campus of Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, and had incredible results. We're so impressed with the students, the faculty, administration, and local law enforcement in Huntington, West Virginia. We know we can replicate this in Terre Haute and on the campus of Indiana State University. Thus far, we've only raised about half of the funds needed, and we need your help. Please be a part of this groundbreaking initiative to help us fight human trafficking and child exploitation in the United States. Thank you so much for all you have done, are doing, and will hopefully do to support Operation Underground Railroad, and specifically this cybercrimes lab on the campus of Indiana State University. Thank you so much for all of your support.
Join the fight by going to Operation Underground or ourrescue.org. Your exclusive home for cryptozoological talk, the RRN, Salem, Oregon. Let's seek the truth.
Hi, I'm Crystal Jordan of the Ropen Radio Network. The RRN is a proud sponsor of the Wildlife Safari, which began as the vision and dream of one man, Frank Hart. It was Hart's goal to create a facility in the Pacific Northwest that would work to save rare and endangered species from all around the world. Wildlife Safari boasts one of the top cheetah breeding research centers on Earth. It is the #1 cheetah breeding facility outside of Africa and #2 on the planet. Take a trip past the incredibly inspiring African elephants. Dare yourself to end your journey with a trip through a carnivore loop featuring Wildlife Safari's top cheetah breeding grounds and ferocious Sumatran tigers. So the next time you plan your vacation, be sure to stop at the Wildlife Safari located in beautiful Southern Oregon. You are closer to Africa than you think.
Welcome back. You're listening to Cryptozoological Talk on the RRN Ropen Radio Network. I'm joined by Catherine Fuller, Milt Marcy, Peter Beach, and Jeff Carone. Glad you can all join us for this special edition here. I'm glad to have this new studio up and running, and we're going to be using it more often. You're all familiar with Studio A, this is Studio 1. And when the radio wings are complete, we're going to have guests from all over come down and give their testimony or tell us about their latest book that they're writing for this field of research. And as I mentioned before, this is not a field for everyone. think you need to keep an open mind. Okay, cryptozoology is a wonderful field to be a part of, but may not be for you. But if you're watching and you're listening and you are interested in this, then I invite you to come and check out our pages, check out our YouTube channel, check out Rumble, Facebook. We are working on a website that is coming. I didn't like the last one we did. For those who know me, I want to go bold or don't go anywhere. It has to be something that I love and enjoy. It has to be immersive, and that's what we're working on. And it's going to bring out all these encounters, all these individuals who have been very, very important to this field. So stay tuned for that. Let me come back to the legs here again, okay? You brought up something here when you were trying to understand a little bit about horses and how they can carry that body over those small legs too. Tell me a little about that.
Well, I've often thought, especially racehorses who exert a great amount of force on their bodies to propel themselves forward. Most of them are over 1,000 pounds. And you look at the lower part of the front leg, even the back leg, they're only that big around, or whoever's looking. And yet they're supporting all of that weight and all of that torque that it takes to move that animal.
Right.
So I don't think that's a very good argument that the legs aren't big enough.
Are too fragile.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And again, that's all they're talking about is the bone, because they can't see how much muscle was around that bone. So that also would add argument to the fact that
You think they could have some sort of a concept of that muscle around those legs, though, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if it'd be accurate. They got concepts, all kinds of concepts.
That's right. Yeah.
Pete, did you want to tell me about that case?
Yeah, my friend Samuel, one of the villagers there, where we were at. At first, they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't know anything about it. But as they got to trust us, then they started coming out with these things. And one of the stories was they built these nests up in these the biggest trees, and they make big nests, and they use timbers that are maybe 1 inch to 2 inches in diameter. They just snap them off of other trees. You understand how hard that is? You can hang on those things and you can't move them,
Right.
but they can snap them like that. And he said their hands and their feet are so strong that they can simply snap it off rather than pull on it.
Wow.
Thinking of hands for a moment here. I better go back for a moment. Catherine, the finger placement of this creature you saw, was it here or was it here?
You mean on top of the wings?
Yes.
It looked like, to me, from where I was, it looked like this. They were curled, and they were black, and they looked like fingers.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Does that explain it?
That does, actually. As I look at some of these variations of pterosaurs, you get an idea about their placement. Okay. Would you say that was pretty accurate, that they were towards the middle of the wing? Were they maybe further away? Were they?
I would say a little closer than middle to the a little.
And it does vary depending on the
Yeah,
genus of
that's.
pterosaur.
I would say it was a little closer to the body than the middle,
Okay.
but it curved kind of down, so it was a little difficult to see where the middle would actually be. I would
Okay.
say it was around the middle, a little closer to the body, I think, than the middle.
Okay. I think it's important that we identify the difference here with pterodactyls and pterosaurs. Okay. So let me go into some history here. I think you'll find this illuminating. Neither birds nor bats, pterosaurs were reptiles, close cousins of dinosaurs. They were also the first animals after insects to possess powered flight. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from a secular side, okay? Not just leaping or gliding, but flapping. Their wings generate lift and travel through the air, yes. They adapted, yes. Maybe my words, not theirs. And consist of dozens of species. Some were as large as F-16 fighter jets, maybe yours, and others as small as paper airplanes. Yes, a Rubnognathus can fit in the palm of your hand. This guy is supposed to be furry. But you can see that they're small to ginormous.
Ginormous,
right?
yes.
The leading theory today is that pterosaurs, dinosaurs, and crocodiles are closely related and belong to a group known as archosaurs. Yes. Not birds. This is coming from the American Museum of Natural History. They said not birds. If it was a bird, it would have feathers.
Yep.
Not a bird. All right. Pterosaurs were an extremely successful group of reptiles. They flourished all throughout the age of dinosaurs, a period of more than 6,000 years. Some had long, slender jaws, elaborate head crest, or specialized teeth, and some were extraordinarily large. Yes, they were. Few pterosaurs lived close to the places where fossils tend to form. Their fragile bones preserved poorly, so pterosaur fossils are frequently incomplete. When you think of giant flying reptiles soaring over prehistoric landscapes, do you call them pterodactyls or do you call them pterosaurs? Pterodactylus antiquus is actually a specific type of pterosaur in the group of Pterosauria, which encompasses the entire group of prehistoric flying reptiles. There was a genus of pterosaur called Pterodactylus, which is where the word pterodactyl subgroup of pterosaurs comes from. But not all pterosaurs belong to this genus. However, pterodactyl is a universal word which helps to communicate to what the creatures are, but not politically correct. Okay? Pterodactylus, from ancient Greek, winged finger, is a genus of extinct pterosaurs. It is thought to contain only a single species, Pterodactyl antiquus, which was the first pterosaur to be named and identified as a flying reptile and one of the first prehistoric reptiles to ever be discovered. Okay. Some good information there. I can see why people will jump to say pterodactyl. So you did the right thing by saying pterodactyl to solidify your account even more, because that's what you knew.
Yeah.
All right. You don't know the word pterosaur at that time. And when I say pterosaur to everybody nowadays, right over their head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, pterodactyl. Oh, yeah, I know what that is. Okay. So you see, it helps.
Right.
They're also not dinosaur birds. But again, it helps to communicate that. All right?
The point of the fingers on the wings, is that for mating? Is that for grabbing on? They don't look very useful up there. Is that that for?
You know,
like they do claw on a dog? Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
He's gonna answer.
They use them for attaching themselves to things like the sides of trees.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they have to use them when they're walking, too, don't they? When they're
And if you look at the way they
ambulatory on the
walk,
ground.
too, they are very,
Yes, yeah, that too.
very
They
slow.
use those when they're walking, huh? Oh, because they're slumped over?
Yeah.
Okay.
The wings come down.
Okay.
Okay, and the arms come down.
Now, I have heard that, like when they're sleeping, they can pull their wings in, and they make themselves look much smaller. You know, their head goes down and their wings are in tight, and they look like maybe a human.
Is this from a paleontology standpoint, or?
It's I forget where I heard that. I think that was from one of the tribes people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, who would know better than the tribes, right?
Right.
They're the ones
So
who see them.
it can be deceptive
Yeah.
in that
Oh, I
situation.
bet, yeah.
Except for that bony crest thing sticking out of the back of his head. That's not really very humanoid looking.
No.
Telltale.
Yeah, yeah. Any of you familiar with Herb Stein?
Yes.
Okay. He's done some great work over the years. Now, Herb has gone to many churches over the years and done his dinosaur.
Did he go to
Spiel.
Mexico?
I think he did.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Zacatecas State in Mexico is, I think, where the breeding ground is for these creatures.
Oh.
Sierra Nevada mountain range is
See.
considered one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're coming down from there, going into Mexico, or they're going into other parts of the nation. He had a really good theory about the head crest. Normally, I'd be thinking this is something that helps for flight. It helps to, for steering. If you are a pterodactyl like a Rhamphorhynchus or a dimorphodon, something with a tail. I believe they use the tail to help steer. And as a matter of fact, one of my eyewitnesses came out and said he saw it use the tail to wrap itself around the tree. So as it's coming in, it's getting ready to grab, and then it grabbed. Interesting. But the head crest, I believe, is part of steering. And also, there's a theory. I don't know if this is true or not. This is Herb Stein's theory. It may be a chamber which can help emit this light. Okay? I don't know for a fact that. But if you look at the Parasaurolophus, which is a dinosaur, land-dwelling dinosaur, aquatic duckbill, okay, or semi-aquatic, it has the same kind of crest.
Yep.
You know, but he uses that to breathe. But others have speculated that there's something else going on with this crest as well.
Why couldn't the crest be used as a sounding chamber, something to amplify?
Yeah. Which brings us to Yakima again.
Yeah.
If that loud sound that you heard, that was almost like it was a jet with the frequency just so high. Are they using that? Is that their resin chamber for emitting such a thing?
I don't know.
What does the fossil record say? Is it hollow? What do they know from the fossils that they've recovered of them?
That I don't know yet. Yeah. I'd like to know more about
That'd be
that.
very interesting, yeah.
You know, there have been times when I've had a chance to study these bones up close, but most of them say, oh, you're a creationist. Well, you know what? We'll schedule something.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Well, the thing is, I didn't tell them I was a creationist. They just looked me up, and then what do you know? We'll schedule something someday down the line, Jake, before you die.
That's too bad.
So you get the idea, the understanding now of the difference between Pterosaur and Pterodactyl. But there's other names, aren't there? We know them as the Ropen.
Yep.
We know them as the Kangamato of Kenya. And this one is known as the breaker of boats. That's the name. So if people wanted to call these creatures Pterodactyl or Pterosaur, you want to call it a Ropen, I don't care, because it does communicate the same thing. All right? And that's what they call them in different parts of the world. They have different names for these creatures.
Yes.
So why are we so quick to dismiss, you can't call it that? Yeah, I can. Because the people call it that.
That's
so
right.
why can't I?
That's right.
Ropen means demon flyer.
Okay.
So the reports that I know of, and these gentlemen are very familiar with it too, there are different variants of Ropens. Okay. That's just the name that they give for a pterosaur, but it represents a demon flyer because what it would do is it would act as a grave robber. Okay. Which I think there are cases where these things have literally tried to dig bodies up from that were buried and take them away, and the people had to fight them off.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? On some of your findings on the Ropen?
I personally didn't run into that. Jonathan Whitcomb talks quite a bit about that on Umboy.
Yeah.
That they were very careful about burying bodies because they would dig them up, especially soon after they were buried. If somebody had been buried a while, they'd probably be okay. But soon after they had buried somebody, they had to station somebody there to watch and make sure that they didn't dig up.
It's true, yeah.
Unbelievable.
As a matter of fact, there was a case where they got there too late and the creature was carrying off the body to the mountain that he already had dug them up. So they started encasing them in concrete. They learned we can't just bury them and put dirt over them. These guys are getting to them.
Two things. Number one, if you could explain the different kinds of fluorescent. You keep using two different kinds of bioluminescence and fluorescent. And then the second thing is there's many stories coming out of the Old West of these stories fighting them off and them harassing the do you have any of those stories to share?
If you're referring to like black and white photos or something like that?
No. Just the stories of them coming in and attacking them, having to get their posses together.
There is one that always stuck out to me was the Native Americans. I always loved to go back to the Native American history because these creatures would invade their area. So they're like, hey, we're not able to just kill this thing so easily. So they would track it down to its hiding place. And they'd wait for it. But they'd have arrows that were dipped in poison.
Right.
So they'd be ready to shoot them. And that's how they were able to get rid of them. But they had found bones and carcasses of humans within the cave systems of the pterosaurs.
Wow.
So they were right to try to exterminate them. They were killing their family members and everything. There's a lot of legends. There's also some that go as far as Tombstone, and it goes all the way into these black and white photos. I don't give any credence to the black and white photos because I'm weary of them.
Okay.
Or leery of them. Pictures can be fabricated.
Yeah.
I'd love to believe they're real, that they're legit, but I'd rather look at the articles instead, such as the Fresno hunting posse back in the 1890s. Big headlines. Said, gunning for dragons in Fresno, California. Looking for a posse. We're going to assemble a posse and we're going to try to track these things down and kill them.
Wow.
But in the article, it said pterodactyl. Headline dragon, article pterodactyl.
Right.
So if you're wondering how why would they put a word like that? They haven't even heard of it yet. Yes, they have. Okay. Dinosaur came about in the 1840s, 50s by Sir Richard Owens, who was a creationist, by the way.
1843.
1843. Okay. He found the iguanodon skeleton. And that's where everything started to change and thinking, oh, maybe our faith is wrong. Oh, no. But Richard Owens was a creationist. He was a God-fearing believer, and there were so many at the time. So they knew these words. They're familiar with these words because they were creating them. But the word dinosaur, it didn't originate till then.
Right.
So before that, they were known as dragons.
Right.
Okay. So looking at a little bit of the backstory, looking at the information, it's important in our history to understand where these words are coming from. But yeah, those are some of the things I'm familiar with. Again, I love these newspaper articles, and I love these images that you see that Dr. Whitcomb has tried to analyze himself. I'm not going to venture in that direction because they can be fabricated.
And the biolumin, the different types?
There's a biofluorescence and the bioluminescence. The bioluminescence is a chemical reaction within the body, okay, that gives the light for communication or to warn off prey. And this is what you'll find in some of the deep-sea creatures in the oceans. Right. And people are thinking, okay, well, if the fish have it, what makes you think something on land could have it or in the sky? Well, why not?
Well, worms, there's some worms that are bioluminescent.
Exactly.
Really?
Exactly. So why should we so easily dismiss such a thing?
That's right.
Like I said, though, I don't believe that all these pterosaurs possess that ability. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But there's a good amount of them that probably do possess it. All right? The larger kind, maybe, like the Ropens that are being seen in Papua New Guinea. They possess that ability. Don't let me lose my train of thought with the different variations of Ropens. We need to come back to that. But the biofluorescence is what they're finding by putting an animal under a scope. Like the Tasmanian devils, the Tassie devils. They just recently discovered that they glow. It's like a purplish color. Okay? But it's not the same reaction, not the same chemical reaction. It's different. Okay. I don't think that's a defense mechanism whatsoever.
Can I expand on that just a little?
Go for it.
When we were sitting on the river at one time, I saw the light way down river. I saw a light, and that light kept getting bigger and bigger, so I could tell it was coming toward us. Right. And it was flying upriver. And so I thought eventually it's going to fly right by us. We're going to get a really good look at this thing. But instead, when it got to maybe 50 to 75 yards from us, and it was on the other side of the river, it either landed or it either landed on the water or in the water. Not sure what. But the light went on. The light would stay on for a while, maybe a minute or two, then it would go off. And would come back on and go off.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm going to get to see this thing. So I had some binoculars under my chair and started watching for it and went on. I could not see it. Even with binoculars and that light, I couldn't make out any image. And it was very frustrating. And we know we had seen one of those creatures, but I couldn't give you any idea of what it looked like. On the way home, I remembered growing up in Kansas on the farm, and we had a lot of lightning bugs. And I used to like to smack them when they get on my hand, and then I'd smear it around, make designs out of the light the luciferase that came out of them.
Wow.
And then I would try to take my hand and light something up, like the doorknob or whatnot. Wouldn't light anything up.
Right.
It doesn't have the property to light anything up. And then I watched nature shows, and I noticed how fish that have that capability don't use it to see their prey. They use it to draw the prey to them.
Right.
Yep.
So that's something you need to remember about this. It's not like regular incandescent light or any other kind of light that we use to light up a room.
That's what the anglerfish does. It has a little dangly ball out in front of it,
yeah.
the deep sea.
Yeah.
Draw it in.
Yeah.
So if it was turning on and off in the river there, it was fishing.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's wow.
It's a lure.
Yeah, a lure. Yeah.
This is what Garth Gussman and I have been trying to understand too, because from what he has seen, him and Dave Watzel from Genesis Park, they have seen variations of lights emitting from these creatures. So it's not just one color. They're emitting green. They're emitting red. And the green, from what they have said, is more of a playful color, that it's curious. Now, I have personally not witnessed that for myself, but they have. Okay, so I'm going off of what they have said.
Right.
So there's a mood swing. There's an attitude of aggressiveness or curiosity from these creatures.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I also want to elaborate on, you mentioned they're not afraid of humans. They are, I think afraid maybe is too strong of a word. They don't like being around humans.
Right.
That they know that, that's dangerous. So they try, where we were on the edge of their habitat in New Guinea. 25, if you look on a map, 25 miles, if you go right to the edge of where the villages were, where we were located, if you go 25 miles in that next area, you won't find any sign of human activity.
Okay. There's
no villages, and just lots of wild habitat. So my thinking is there's lots of pterosaurs in there on the edge of human. That's why they're occasionally seen in the villages we were at. That's only when they wander over there, astray one every now and then.
Sense.
But and again, up where you were, they probably mostly were over in a more wilder area. But you got one that, for some reason, got out of its habitat. But they won't generally want to hang around humans. On the other side, I'm sure they would defend themselves if they had to.
Yeah. If we had like the skeletal remains of a firefly, maybe we could understand a little bit more. Yeah. But has anybody ever wanted to just grab a firefly, a dead carcass, and try to dissect that?
I know somebody used to take it and squeeze it out in their hand and try to light up light bulbs.
Right.
I didn't know you could do that with them. Yeah.
I don't see why anybody would think that they could determine whether there's bioluminescence from a fossil. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The organ is long gone. If it's fossilized, what is it? It's not any other
Could there
thing.
be like a remnant of something, a source, something to track
Chemical.
down?
Wouldn't even know what it was.
That's right.
So
the
that's why they don't go
chemicals
looking
are all
for it.
gone.
Okay. Something that I was told about that might be a loophole is the bones. There's like, within the structure of a pterosaur fossil, there's these stems, like hair, that's running through the bone itself. I mean, of course, anytime you look under a microscope, you're going to see so much more detail.
Yes.
Just look at the woolly mammoth stuff. But there was something very odd that a paleontologist had stumbled upon that he thought was really weird within the bones of the pterosaur, which could be a potential clue for us. I don't know for sure. Just speculation. But it kind of baffled him. So I'm not sure what he has done with it since. But
And where's your thought, this glowing, before you get back onto the different kinds of ropen, where is it the whole body bioluminescent, or is it a pouch on them? Is it the head? What do you think the light's
I think
from?
Milt and Peter will tell you that it depends, because I've heard reports of body only, then I've heard it on the wings and tail.
Okay.
So all over, body,
All over,
wings,
okay.
tail.
Yeah.
Sometimes not. But I do have this really interesting case from 1903 about a pterosaur.
You
that was,
saw it?
I'd be the oldest living human being right now. That'd be great. Well, if we go back to 1903 in Iowa, they had for a certain amount of nights, 4 or 5 nights straight, of this creature that had a light source from its forehead illuminating. And they described something that looks like a pterosaur that haunted them but never attacked anybody. He would just kind of observe. But they were so freaked out by him that they actually tried to eradicate him and found out there was another one. So they all positioned themselves ready to have a gunfight with this thing. And we're talking 10 or more people shooting at one time, and nobody hits this thing. Instead, it gets into the cave system, which is subterranean, and they barricade it in there. And over the years, they heard screams coming from there. So they actually potentially had a pterosaur on their hands, but this one was lighting up from the forehead.
Amazing.
I find that interesting.
Yeah.
All the way back to 1903 in Iowa. And this is a legend known as the Van Meter Visitor. A really, really fascinating account. You can get the book. It's a great one.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's go back to the Ropens here real fast. So we have some that are with tails, some that are not. Some with tails and head crest. And teeth. Interesting, wouldn't you say? Because we don't have any fossils of such a pterosaur yet. Okay. Remember that they're very fragile, supposedly, and the full structural skeleton is scarce. Although they did find one in Romania that they called Dracula. It was huge, like a Quetzalcoatlus.
Complete skeleton.
Yeah, complete skeleton. Yeah, rare.
Very, yeah.
So the natives are saying that they have these features: the head crest, teeth, and tail. Is this still pertaining to the Ropen, or is this something else like the different parts of New Guinea, say in Dava or the core? They have different names, but is this still related to Ropen research? Do they have these? Have you stumbled upon this for yourself? Teeth, tail? Is this what separates a Ropen from others?
Well, from Whitcomb's accounts, or what he's put together, the Ropen has teeth and a tail.
Right.
We didn't see that. We saw more like Catherine saw, was a large flying animal with no tail, or a very, very small one. You know, between its legs, it had this webbing, and the tail was probably part of that webbing. We wouldn't even know it was a tail. And apparently had no teeth. I mean, they keep their mouths closed. You can't see the teeth. But I believe with the Ropens, you can see the teeth, even if their mouths aren't open.
Okay.
Isn't that the definition of the pteranodon, is the toothless?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meaning behind it. Gentlemen, let's go into this polygraph examination now. Very, very important. So this was conducted in the month of April. And this is the part that I think is very exciting for a lot of people. Because since when do we have an eyewitness volunteer for such a test? We've seen them shown on Monster Quest and other shows. But as I brought up before, they're filming during these shows. The test itself, that's a violation of the test. You're not supposed to do that. But if you have the mullah and the right examiner in California, who's maybe more liberal, they'll conduct the test and let you film. Okay. In our case in Albany, Sally Jo Donahue, when I contacted her and I said, look, we're trying to find a polygraph examiner who will conduct this test of an eyewitness encounter of a flying creature. Will you be willing to do it? She said, oh, that sounds exciting. Everybody else, 4 others, said, not going to touch that with a 6-foot pole. The next person said, I'm not going to touch that with a 20-foot pole. So I was turned down quite a bit. I think people are afraid to even touch such a subject because they'll lose notoriety. Okay. Not something they want to be known for. Sally was very interested in this. and she was curious. And in the result of it was extremely fascinating because it actually helped make her think a little bit more about the world around her.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'd like to be able to show this video clip to you. Okay, this is separate from the one that you saw on the broadcast with Crystal Jordan. It's about 10 minutes long, very informative. You need to see this. It's very important. And then we'll get into the documentation, okay? And then later on, some more confirmed information here about a potential pteranodon in Idaho. And I want to see if his movement adds up to what you saw. Maybe Catherine can identify if it is a fraud for the first time on this network. All right? So I'm going to play this video for you.
A dinosaur now that I'm not an expert on them. The only thing I knew that I thought had the bony crest in the back was a pterodactyl, and that's what I called it to my husband. I said, you know, what is that? He said, I don't know.
The universal name.
Yeah, and just, I said, it's a pterodactyl. And he said, well, those are extinct. I said, but we're looking at it.
Yeah.
It's not extinct if it's, you know, hello, those two things aren't going together.
Right.
So, I found out later. It's colder out there.
I'm going to have you look
isn't it?
down.
Okay.
This one.
Really good hair. Thank you, Sally.
You are welcome.
I knew that's what would happen, and it did.
The immediate feeling you had in you.
I have confidence in the polygraph now.
Right.
That's good.
Because you must have had a lot of doubters over the years, so to be vindicated.
No, I thought it would either be positive or it would be inconclusive. I wasn't really sure with my own responses, my body responses and everything that she was doing and how they do it. I wasn't sure if it would be inconclusive or if it would say that I was telling the truth. I knew it wouldn't be negative. So I wasn't worried about that part, but I don't know how they work, you know, what they do. She explained it, you know, it registers skin responses and your heart rate. And
resistance to electricity or electrodermal or galvanic skin response, yeah.
But I mean, whether you're nervous or not, I didn't feel like I was nervous, but you never know what your body's going to do compared to how you feel. I mean, you don't know if your body's doing something weird.
How much faith do you put in the lie detector test, Sally?
Oh, they're an excellent tool. They're not 100%, you know, and anybody that tries to say they are is just...
So I got a funny question for you. After doing this and everything, what is your thoughts now, seeing that somebody, as much as they believe in that, were you a believer before about this?
You know, I think there's a lot of things that we don't know.
That's right.
Today, a friend of mine posted a thing on Facebook that was this little, I swear it was a dog toy. It looked like a little pink and yellow dog toy, and it was actually a moth.
Oh my goodness, yeah, you're right.
And it did not look real. Yeah. And if you look at the animals in the ocean, they look like aliens. I mean, it's unbelievable what's out there. But I will say I'm a little surprised, just because, not to say that they don't exist, but
it's hard to swallow.
It's hard to imagine
it
is, everybody hasn't seen them, or you know. So
well, I think what actually helps can bring this to a conclusion too is the fact that we have bones of these creatures.
Oh, really?
We don't have bones of Sasquatch.
Yeah.
But yet, 70% of Americans believe he exists. Like,
is it that high?
It is that high. 90% of Americans believe that UFOs are real too.
Mm-hmm. So that's in Congress now. 30% that Congress.
Well, yeah, but
UAP, yeah.
We would be very arrogant. I mean, we're an arrogant society anyway. But
yeah,
how much more arrogant could we be than to think we're the only living beings in the galaxies? You know, they put the Hubble space telescope out, and they filmed a totally black area for what, 2 months?
Yep.
Showed the galaxies out there.
Goodness, so deep and deep.
There's
space,
stuff we don't know, you know. But I do find it hard to believe that you could hide a 30-foot bird.
Right.
But Not bird, but
In the 90s,
Yeah.
Dateline, you might want to search it on the internet if you're curious. In the 90s, I believe it was. And Trey Smith actually did a great video on this, but Dateline released some findings. They actually found in Montana and stuff, viable red blood cells inside dinosaur bones. And when they went public with the information, it was on the news. All those scientists were fired, except for one who recanted and said, I probably made a mistake. But they redid the test over and over on rhinoceros, nose, and T-Rex bones, and they still found it, which goes against the thought that this is millions and millions of years old because it wouldn't be there.
right.
But do research on it, and that's mainstream media. That's
Right.
not some, but
Right.
they squashed it. So my point is, they squash because there's a narrative, and people write history, and they want it to stay to a certain thought. So.
Was the result that Catherine didn't lie, or that Catherine was telling the truth?
We'll get to that.
I knew she didn't lie.
Right.
Just because she came forward.
Yeah. I want to make something very well known to those who are watching, those who have known me for a long time. We have done polygraph tests with Salem PD for 15 years, and I was a part of 4 or 5 of them. So, folks, I know exactly what to expect with polygraph tests. Okay, I've been getting a lot of emails suggesting that, Jake, you need to be educated about. I know about polygraph tests. Okay, we've done them. All right, they're grueling. They're long. Some are shorter than others, but I've been a part of that process, and I believe it's an excellent instrument to use, because otherwise, why would the court systems still be using them? Right.
Yep.
All right. So I know the process. I'm familiar with it. No more emails, please. I don't want to get any more about that. Okay, I know what I'm talking about. Anyway, what I'd like to do is pass out this paperwork so you can see for yourself. We'll go over this together. These are the results, and you also find the imagery of what Catherine drew on here as well.
It's not a Picasso.
But it's something that's worth noting, because we need to have sketches from eyewitnesses. It's very important. Doesn't matter if it's something that is extremely well drawn. It just needs something to go off of.
It was a 5-minute doodle. Don't judge.
If anybody has any questions, I know Catherine will be happy to answer them. I'm getting ready to play another recording. This is a vocal recording from Sally, where she goes over some of the detailed work of these examinations.
There you go.
Are these your notes?
Those are the notes that Sally took when I was talking to her.
It shows that no deception indicated and no deception indicated. That's where she said she was surprised by the results when I was asking her that.
So,
surprised.
Catherine passed all 3 phases of this test, which is something that Sally is not familiar with having. She's conducted over 4,000 examinations. Majority of them have been lies. Okay, she exposes the lies. This is not the case. Catherine passed the 3 phases, and I will be playing that recording here shortly. So what we have here is positive identification, that someone clearly saw something that's genuine, that's real. I don't know of many people who are willing to do something like this and put their name out there for this kind of a test. No one's willing to. But Catherine chose to.
And to pay for it.
And paid for it, too. We paid a small portion. The network paid $200. Catherine paid $400. Okay? But she was willing to do this on
Jacob,
her own
it's
accord.
important to also put out there on top of the lie detector test and all that. She's been a detective for many years, or she was.
Correct.
So she's also trained on body language on top of the lie detector test stuff and everything. It's not like that's all she did.
Exactly.
She also made us pay for it before she gave us the results,
That's correct.
which I thought was pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice that. You're right, though. Yeah.
Yeah. But how special is that to be able to have someone come into your studio or the examination room, conduct this test, and then be surprised at the results? Because Sally said, I did not expect her to pass.
Yep.
Since we're being honest here, dealing with examinations myself, I did not expect her to pass either. Now, only because the instrument itself is not foolproof, something could have gone wrong. And I've seen that happen. I believed Catherine. I just didn't believe the machine. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay? But she passed.
Yep.
Now, what does that say for the general public? Credible eyewitness, creature spotted.
That's right.
A living creature was seen. A living pterosaur was seen. Let me play this recording for you, gentlemen.
Jacob believed you. And just make sure he wasn't saying he didn't believe that.
Right.
That's why you wouldn't pass. It's because there had to have been something where it's like, okay, this is kind of, the machine part.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That wondering how people perceive me, like you, I don't care anymore.
How old were you when you stopped caring?
Oh, maybe when I started doing this stuff about 20 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
It has been probably about a decade since we worked with Susan Coates and Salem PD for polygraph examinations. And sometimes we have different examiners who are a little bit different. I think I pretty much understand the documentation here. Sorry it took me a while to get back to it. But I wanted to get an idea about the process again. I already know, I have a recording of you explaining the process of it. However, I just wanted to go over a few things here and let you be on your way.
Sure.
You mentioned that there was like 3 phases.
I do a practice test where I have them answer, it's either numbers or days of the week. So I think I probably did numbers. So I had to write a number on a piece of paper, and then I just asked, usually it's the number 3. And I asked, did you write the number 1? Did you write 2? Did you write 3? Did you write 4? Did you write 5? And have her say no to all of them. So that way she's lying once, she's telling the truth 4 times. It really gives them a feel for what the test was going to be like before we're doing, the regular questions, because it's pretty stressful the first time through, especially because I'll ask a question, they answer yes or no, then they sit there for about a half a minute.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they hear every sound and, everything itches or, they notice stuff. So it's kind of nice to get that practice first.
Okay. Then what's the next step after that?
Well, after that, I do the actual polygraph.
Okay.
And then I go through that between 3 and 5 times.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah.
And I remember my colleague was
and
asking
that's
you.
standard.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. My colleague asked you this. He said, how much faith do you have in the polygraphics itself? You mentioned that they're a great tool to use. But again, they're not foolproof. Everybody should know this one.
No, they're not perfect, right? Yeah.
So, being not perfect, do the court systems still like to use them? How often do you conduct these tests for yourself? At your company?
Gosh, I don't know. I've done over 4,000 tests.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It just depends. Yeah, right now I try to just do 4 or 5 a week.
Okay.
Because I'm homeschooling my kids and stuff.
Sure.
And, I put a lot of faith in them, but again, they're not foolproof. Not much is. Eyewitnesses have been found to be about 50 or 60% accurate, 50% accurate, which is pretty low.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I often wondered if the courts were still using them here and there. It does vary depending on the court system, I think. But
it does, and there's still the Dow Pharmaceuticals case way back when that just addresses how scientific evidence is introduced, and because polygraph is not recognized by, the full scientific population, it's the main reason why it's not admitted. I have, I guess I had one that was accepted into court. One of the attorneys told me, but I don't even know which one was after the fact.
Sure.
Didn't testify on it.
I had wondered.
By DHS a lot and other places.
Okay. I guess that actually almost pretty much answered my question, because I was going to say, if, they're not foolproof, why do you suppose some attorneys like to use them? Why do you suppose the court systems still prefer to use the examinations as a go-to?
Well, for one thing, one real quick example, I had a case where I didn't investigate it because I don't do tests on my own investigations, but we had a child that was under, I believe she was under a year old. She'd been sexually offended, and she'd had 4 people that had been around her: mom, dad, uncle, and I think a friend of dad. And so now you've got this child that's clearly been sexually abused. You don't know who's done it, but one of them did, because they're the only people that have been around her. So we test all of them, and I think it was the uncle that failed the polygraph and then admitted to it. Without that, those kids, CHS would have had this child they wouldn't want to put back in a home when they don't know who offended her and take a chance of it happening again, but you don't want to keep her from her parents.
Exactly.
So cases like that, it's really helpful.
I see.
Attorneys like it because if the client did not do what they're accused of, they can use it in dealing with the district attorney, the detectives, things like that. It helps. I've tested a lot of confidential informants on whether they, saw what they said, or, gosh, my first one, I just did the polygraph. The guy passed on, seeing all these drugs at this one place. We did a search warrant, and I rode out in the light armored vehicle with the full SWAT team. And then I started getting a little nervous. So the newer examiner, and I thought, oh my gosh, what if it wasn't a good polygraph and we don't find any dope in this house? But we did. It was a good test.
Excellent.
So things like that we use it on. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very helpful. Agree. I feel the same way, that I do think these methods are very important still and need to be used.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Out of your 4,000 that you have conducted, how many, I think you mentioned that there was a certain amount that failed the examination.
Oh, that really varies based on what the test is.
Okay.
The majority of the time, if somebody's been arrested and charged with an offense, and I test them, the majority of the time they fail. And the majority of the time they did the offense, and the system gets it right.
I see.
If I'm testing somebody for a defense attorney and the person has not been charged yet, whether it's because they don't have enough evidence to charge him or they're still working on building the case, a lot of those guys pass because they really didn't do it. And that's, partially why they haven't been charged yet. Sex offender, I do a lot of sex offender testing. Treatment works better if they're out of denial, if they're admitting to the offenses that they were convicted of, and so sometimes we test on that. It just helps them to do better in treatment.
Okay.
We do full disclosures for the same reason, to find out what their issues are. A lot of those pass because, I sit down and explain to them they're not going to get through it if they lie, and then they'll give me all the information that we need, and then pass confirming what they told me.
I see.
So it really varies on what the case is. Fidelity tests, which I don't do anymore, they almost always fail if the partner sends them in.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've had anybody fail that was the person that called me and said, I want to take a polygraph to show my partner that I haven't been, screwing around on them. Yeah, so it just varies with the case.
Sure does.
Or the type of test.
Last question I have for you is, could we go over these results? I was unable to record what you had been saying. For the most part, I got everything else except for when you told us about the results when they were finally ready. So I guess I was under the impression there was actually 3 phases to the examination. And you just explained some of it, yes. And in the end, I remember you mentioned that she did pass these phases that you went through, which was pretty surprising to hear of because, you know, like you had mentioned, this is not foolproof, not a foolproof system. But she did very well, which was, I have to admit, I was surprised too. I was not expecting that.
I was surprised too. Clearly, she believes what she said, and I really don't think people believe lies. I mean, she doesn't seem to have any mental health issues or anything. So, you know, yeah, I was. But I admit I was surprised as well.
Yeah, it looks like in the report there was the medical record that showed that she had no past as far as illness or anything like that along those lines.
Right. So maybe that's what you're talking about is the phases, because I start out having signed the release, you know, that they won't take the test, that they're not going to sue me, that they know it's not perfect, that I can release it to, in this case, to you. And then I go through some medical questions with them just to make sure that there's, if they're on any medication that could affect the polygraph, or if they have any issues that could affect it, that I know about it and I can make a note of that. And then there's the interview phase where, you know, she told me all about it and showed me the picture she'd drawn, and we went through the whole thing. And, I did draw, I think we drew out, or I wrote on one of the pictures of the animal exactly what she described, so that I could test her on that and know that we were both talking about the same thing. Then I explained how the test worked. Then we did the practice test. Then we did the actual polygraph. And the actual polygraph, we go through, by state law, it has to be 2 times, but best practices, we do it between 3 and 5 times.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah. And then the ending where, you know, I just give her the results. So.
Okay. Perfect. That is what I needed, and I wanted to be able to explain that a little bit further to anyone who had any questions, because eventually people will be asking me questions here and there, and that's
I'm
fine.
sure they will, yeah.
It's expected. All right,
yeah,
Sally.
for sure.
Well, I sure appreciate you, and I appreciate your time. And again, lastly, thank you so much for your willingness to conduct this test for our organization.
Absolutely, anytime.
Okay. You have a good day and a good week ahead.
You too, thank you. All right, you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. That was Sally Jo Donahue from SJ Polygraph. She's the owner. She's been conducting tests for years and years, and is well familiar with Susan Coates here in Salem PD, which we used to work with. And again, I will explain. I'll be enough of that. Imagine how relieved I was to get those results in the end. The feeling of that, all these years culminating to this moment. How happy I was for Catherine to be able to come forward and have that just lifted, that feeling. Wow. This was a real, genuine encounter that did happen in 1999.
That's right.
And needs to be told. And now with these results, we have more proof to back it up.
That's right.
And that's the most important thing. I'm fired up.
Yes, you are. I can tell this.
But most important, I'm really happy for Catherine.
Validation's an amazing thing, isn't it? To be validated, to be like, I told you so. I told you it wasn't. She even, you know, you're not crazy. She said that. No, mental illness. I like that part in there.
I wasn't worried about that part.
No.
It is a step in the right direction.
Yes.
And I believe your encounter is going to help people come forward more often.
I hope so.
Instead of hiding in the dark.
I hope so.
Because again, who can they go to?
That's right.
Who can they turn to?
That's right.
The park rangers can't do anything with this. They might listen, but it's most of the time going to get swept under the rug. 9 times out of 10.
Yep.
Even the park rangers themselves have seen these things, but they can't come forward.
I think the park rangers are told not to broadcast information that would keep people from coming to the park.
Right.
Because their job is to generate income. And if there's pteranodons running around.
Yeah, I can see how that could be bad for business, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I like Jacob said, I sure hope this emboldens people to come forward and know that there is a place of supporters. Yep.
Exactly. Her instrumentation was a little bit different from what I'm used to in the past. things have certainly evolved in the computer world. So a little bit different from what I was used to, but still delivered the results we wanted.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me ask you about this image, okay, Catherine?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I believe that this image is the closest thing that you could find related to your pteranodon. Is that correct?
I have to look at what you're looking at there again. Let's see.
I find it interesting the eyes were black.
Right.
That's key.
Right. I just noticed she said there's yellow on the beak too. Your hair was a lot longer back then too, Catherine. I see that.
Yes, it was. And I was skinnier.
Yeah. Where was the possible yellow at on the beak, by the way?
The yellow?
Yeah, you said the possible yellow on the beak.
I don't know that it was necessarily. I don't really. I would say probably toward the tip.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was all black, but if there was any other color, it would have been like lighter on the beak, or maybe a little bit yellow. I don't
Black like a crow, huh? Just that.
Yeah.
No different tones of black.
Everything black.
Wow.
Just black, 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 black.
The eyes, everything. Wow. That's
But it
dark.
looked kind of charcoal in some places because of the way the light was hitting it. You know what I mean? So
think about how hard that makes them to be spotted in the nighttime, even more being all black, one color. Yeah.
It's interesting when I hear about just mostly the black pterosaurs that are out there. I hear black or I hear gray. It reminds me of the deer population here in Oregon. As you see the more healthy ones that are brown, and you see the ones that are gray.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the same thing kind of applies to these guys.
Is that always the color everybody hears?
No, not necessarily. I have one report of it being multicolor. Yeah.
Bright colors or like green?
Bright color.
Wow.
Bright colored. And it's extremely rare.
Yeah.
But it's mostly black and gray. And maybe brown as well, I'm sure, from what you probably have found in Papua New Guinea.
I don't think we ran across anybody that said it was brown.
Okay.
But gray and black. Yeah.
I'm probably referring to Gideon Coral from Whitcomb's expedition.
this particular animal was really very, very healthy.
Okay. Because of the sheer size of it, too.
No, there wasn't any tears in the wings. There wasn't, no dents, low mileage. It was it was beautiful. If a pteranodon can be beautiful, it was a beautiful animal. I mean, in terms of health and vigor, it didn't appear to have any scars or any tears in its wings or anything. It was
maybe
just,
like what
beautiful.
you could see in an older elephant. You can tell how much older they are by looking at the skin.
It didn't look old to me, but I don't know what they look like when they're old. It looked like a prime specimen. I mean, it was beautiful.
May have a couple of things to compare to when it comes to the age of other birds and things like that. But
yes,
with these guys, no, because we don't have them in cages where we can go and see them in a zoo and start studying them.
I'm wondering, Catherine, have you ever seen Dwayne Hodgkinson's interview from World War II? He's the one that went down in a plane, and they were walking through some tall grass trying to get to help. And he's a co-pilot, and he were walking through, and then a pterosaur flew over them from behind.
Wow.
And flew out, did a big loop, and then lowered itself, came in lower, back toward them. They dropped down into this 6-foot tall grass, and the grass was just going like this. And he described what he saw, and he said to his co-pilot, it reminded me so much of you and your husband. He said, "You know what that was? That was a pterodactyl." And his co-pilot said, "Well, it couldn't be. They died out millions of years ago."
Yep.
And so he believes these, I don't know what you want to call them, but people that have an agenda that give us all these millions of years, rather than his eyes. But the main thing, and the reason I asked the question was I was wanting to compare your description with his. Now we're halfway around the world, so it could be a different creature. I mean, not vastly different, but it could be a different creature within the pterosaur kind.
Right.
Yep.
But still, there might be some similarities that would be interesting to check out.
How about the size? He said it was the size of his airplane.
Which was 29 feet.
There you go. Wow.
That's
Yeah.
basically a Cessna, right?
Well, it was a World War II plane.
Okay. Okay.
They were fighting in the war. There was a lot of, in fact, where we were, there were Japanese armaments still up in the hills around there.
I see.
Wow.
Still must have been coming back to get them. If it passed
Right.
them,
Very
and
possible,
circled
yeah.
Yeah.
back around, it was.
Or at least get another good look at them, you know.
Yeah,
We need to
that's-
take our last break. When we come back, I want to see if there's a comparison here, and maybe finally put this to rest, of the Idaho Ropen video. Now, it's not a fuzzy Bigfoot. You can clearly see that this is a flying pterosaur. But is it genuine? Maybe Catherine can tell us if it is or not. And maybe it's animatronic. We shall find out. You're listening to Cryptozoological Talk on the RRN, Ropen Radio Network. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hello, I'm Carl Ball, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. We are a 501c3 chartered educational, scientific, research, and religious entity. Our objective is to retrieve by international research, to excavate by direct participation, to research information that describes the truth about the entire cosmos. Our purpose is then to preserve those, to display those, and to disseminate those. From time to time, I have as guests certified scientists that will give you vital, intriguing information, and hopefully you'll return again and again. Welcome to our Creation Evidence Museum.
Your exclusive home for Cryptozoological Talk, the RRN, Salem, Oregon. Let's seek the truth. Joining me, Catherine Fuller from Astoria, Oregon, Peter Beach, Milt Marcy, and Jeff Carone. We've gone over some amazing information involving this sighting and Ropens in general, pterosaurs in general, the difference between pterosaurs and pterodactyls. Now comes to a point in the segment when I want to bring this out and see if there's any truth to it. Or is it just the product of good CGI? I personally think it is CGI. But I'd like to play this video for you. Most of you may have been familiar with this account. It came out in 2015 and it was broadcasted on the news in Idaho. Living pterosaur. Okay. When you see this video, you'll know what I'm talking about, but I want to play this for Catherine. I want to see if she believes this is a real creature. Other colleagues of mine believe this is a fraud. I'm trying to find grounds for this. It's a good possibility that it is, but let's see what an eyewitness has to say about this herself. Let me play that video for you. I find it interesting that the man is not screaming or saying anything. A closer view.
The beak isn't pointed.
The creature looks down. Now, I found that interesting, but the wings kind of fold in a little.
The wings are wrong.
Gold.
It's like he has a snub-nosed beak, which is
Yeah.
It looks like
weird.
a made glider, like something cardboard.
My opinion, it's bird-like. It's somebody is trying to make it look like a bird.
Now, is there any kind of flyer out there on the market that would rival such a thing? I cannot find one. I found it interesting how the head dips down, goes back up, but it still feels and looks robotic. Now, it could have been that the owner of this video is the one who created this pterosaur, either through CGI or radio control. Okay? The original owner of this video will not come forward.
That tells you something.
Yeah. If this was such a profound experience, don't you think it should be told? Majority of the people I meet have said that they're willing to testify of what they've seen, either through voice recording or they're willing to come on my show. But majority of them just want to tell their account and go on. Fine. But this person was not willing to come forward at all. There may be some new evidence to back this claim that this is potentially real. I'm not saying it is. Looking at it, there's something wrong with it. Can these creatures take a different shape over time? Can they adapt? I'm not suggesting they're evolving, all right? I'm suggesting that they have to thrive and they have to survive. There's a theory that they may be interbreeding with birds and why we may potentially have pteranodons with tails. Just a wild theory, but I wanted to mention that, okay? Nonetheless, very interesting video. But I find it even more interesting that the news channels in Idaho would actually show this on their broadcasts. Now, don't you think that would have been met with ridicule?
Ratings.
Why would they even bother with such a thing?
Ratings.
Ratings.
I'm trying to figure out how it can be in focus at all times.
I can shed some light on that.
Okay.
Okay. Again, if you are doing a CGI creature, you film the area, and then you digitize it in. I've done this myself when we did the Ropen of Arkansas. All right? So you film the scenery, then you do this. You add it in. Let's keep something else in mind. There are two different kinds of recording methods. You have your camcorders, which you see in this studio, versus DSLR versus phone, so potentially 3. If you're using a phone and you're wanting to capture an animal that's flying, you have a better response at capturing it with a phone. Not so much with a camcorder or DSLR. It is that much more difficult.
When it dips its head down, that should make it go right into the ground. But it just keeps right on going. Something's wrong with the balance of that thing.
Yeah.
The head has got to weigh something.
Are there pterosaurs that have that snub-nosed beak thing?
Remember, there's different variants of them.
Right, and I know you know more about that than I do. The one I saw didn't have a snub nose, so
Okay. Yeah. There are certain kinds that do have that.
I think they took a picture of a bird and they superimposed that.
Well, let me say one thing about something we've already discussed. When I was looking up at the creature we saw in Papua New Guinea, I could not see a head, nor did Pete. So we're thinking the head is like a swan's head. It bent back and was over the body. So we're underneath, looking straight up at it. We can't see a head.
Well, we can
because
see the front part of the head.
Maybe a little bit of the beak sticking out.
In the head, yeah.
But I didn't really see much as far as a head goes.
Okay.
Of course, I was focused on those C-shaped wings and the knobs out on the wings.
It also can depend on where you're standing. So this guy clearly has it at the side of him. Okay, so he's off in the distance looking towards the side.
Yeah.
So it's a side shot.
But you can see from there that the head is sticking out quite a ways in front.
Exactly.
And
Now
they
look
keep
at the
playing-
feet too.
Yeah, but look at the wings here. Watch. See how they fold up like that?
Yeah.
That's reminiscent of right there. That's reminiscent of like when you're flying a kite or something. The way the air's pulling up on it, and there's something pulling back down. Those wings aren't flapping like you would see in a bird or any kind of long bird with muscles intricately. It's like one solid piece with the bend in the middle. Look at. When a bird flies, it comes down and it kind of flaps in like this. You know what I mean? There's several pieces that are responsible for it. But look at it. It looks like it's floating on the right there, especially right there.
It's flapping its wings. This animal doesn't flap its wings.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. They soar.
It's all soaring, huh?
And it's not down at the edge. This is like a bird.
I also
wings
think
are flapped down. It's like this.
Yeah.
That's how a pterosaur has its wings.
I also think those wings are a little bit too narrow.
Yeah, it is too narrow.
They should be
It's more like
wider.
a bird.
Front to back should be wider.
Thicker, huh? Like
Especially near the bird, near the body.
If you study a bird, their aerodynamics and the mechanical use of the wings, everything, the biomechanics, I think you can clearly distinct something here. That something's not adding up. That this creature is a fake. Something I do point out is the feet.
Okay.
Okay. Catherine, was your pteranodon's feet tucked under, or was it extended?
No, they were in back of it.
Okay, just like him?
Yep. They drug. It's like when you see a dog rubbing its tummy on the carpet and it brings its feet behind it.
Yep.
That's exactly what it was doing.
When you seen that, what did you think? Did you think, "Oh my goodness, that's 1999," or what did you think?
What did you think?
I usually can tell if something is CGI, and this is, if it's CGI, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say that. There's usually some kind of a blurriness or weirdness around the thing that's superimposed on top of a video, and I don't see.
But is that
anything.
how you remembered yours flying?
No.
What's different about that one when you,
Mine was gliding. It didn't. It only did one really slow down and up. It didn't do all that flapping.
How about the extension of the head? Was it that visible, or was it more sucked in?
It was all the way. It was all the way extended. It wasn't tucked in like he was talking. It wasn't swan like you were talking about. And it had a pointed. It had a pointed beak. But Jacob has said that there are other species that have that snub nose.
They're not always pointy.
So
you wouldn't just throw this video out and say fake. You're not.
I don't know enough about CGI to be able to.
Let me clarify a little bit further. So if you want something that's believable in a film,
right,
you've got to make it look darker. Another good example of this is the Black Shuck we did about the Phantom Hounds of East Anglia. We did CGI for that. And in order for it to look better, it had to be in a dark scenery, dark backgrounds, give it some darkness to it, the shading. I believe it was deliberately done this way to make it look more real. Because you look at the shadows of the trees. Okay?
Okay.
So when you're doing CGI work, you want it to look believable, and you've got to add that shading to it. You see a hint of color as he dives down.
Yeah,
right?
gold almost.
And right. Enough to play with the mind, and then continue on.
The way it's diving kind of reminds me of like how a hawk or some other bird of prey would do right before it dove down to get a rabbit or something.
I take it you've never seen this video before?
I have seen it.
You have, okay.
Yeah.
What about you, gentlemen?
I've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it, but you make a very good point. Now we see a little green there. Now we see color.
But not with the animal.
But, okay, so that right there makes it look like it's broad daylight. Why is it if it's broad daylight, when he points up into the clouds where there should be more light, we only see darkness?
Let's see the ground again. That's an excellent point.
The trees are black, too.
Yeah, the trees are black, but then you go over here to the ground. Yeah.
Lots of color there.
Lots of brightness, too, yeah.
Oh, now they're green, but when he's filming the creature, they
It
turn
goes
black. Yeah.
All right.
Good eye.
Well, it can also be the camera, okay? Because it almost feels like he used a smartphone for this. It was 2015, okay? Again, like I said, smartphones are easier to record something with. You see a bird in the sky, and you can fixate on it real fast. Okay, you can position real fast.
Right.
Camcorder, I would say, is more difficult, and I've had that experience for myself. Now, I could be wrong, all right, but that's just my personal take on that. That it's easier with the smartphone. DSLR, kind of the same premise as the camcorder, a little bit more effective, but they didn't have mirrorless back then. Right.
But how many people are walking around with a camcorder in their pocket versus a cell phone?
Right.
You're going to whip out the cell phone. You're not going to, let me whip out my camcorder.
And we had smartphones at that time. So
right. That makes sense.
I believe that was filmed with a smartphone. And until somebody steps forward or comes out and says, hey, that's my video. I've tried reaching out to numerous people. People have taken this video and they've shown it somewhere else. I've tried to reach out to the original owner. No response.
You found who the original owner of it was?
Well, I've tried to.
Okay.
Maybe he's married to someone that won't let him do that.
That's awesome.
That's a good possibility.
Then how did it get out?
I think that, here's a theory of mine, Jake's theory. I think if this is real, that somebody paid him a visit. Okay. And I know this is real because people have had their assets frozen for coming forward with the Sasquatch.
Really?
One man had his house repossessed because he wouldn't shut up about it. The government came in and relocated them. Wow. If you believe the Sasquatch is real, I personally believe it is real. Okay? So there are people in organizations that know about these creatures and are eradicating them or relocating them. In the case of pterosaurs, I believe they're eradicating them. Okay? We had a situation in Fresno, California, where one was seen. I have the picture of it. I don't have it with me.
Let's back up to the eradicating part. Now, what is that? What do you mean eradicating?
Now she's the host. Okay, so if one is spotted and people report it, I'll give you an example. The case that I was talking about in Fresno, people had seen it. They took a picture of it. A very large pterosaur. It kept making trips back to this facility. And you're like, okay, a wooden facility, structured? No, it was a metal warehouse. Okay? So it kept going there over and over again till eventually that warehouse was burned to the ground. A warehouse? A storage warehouse burned to the ground. Something's not right. Again, I'm conjecture theories, conspiracy theories. I'll put that to rest. But what I'm saying is this is a very real thing to me, that these authorities are coming through. Once they get wind of it, relocation or extermination.
And it's not just nice. It was, of course, just somebody's conspiring to do it. But it would be one thing if that was the only incident. You have several instances where people were shut up, shut down, something happened because they wouldn't be quiet about it.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying.
And these are real individuals.
Right.
Okay?
There is something to that with our Yakima.
Yes.
I was out there one time, and I could tell that we called him Farmer Grump.
Yeah.
He would not let us. He didn't want to talk to us. We first talked to him.
He was across the street
Yeah.
from
Right.
where we,
And it was his tree, I think. any rate, I was clever. I said, we're looking for a rare bird. And I could tell that things were clicking in here. And he said, without any hesitation, he says, you know, if there's a rare, I think he said reptile. If there is a rare flying reptile, I'm not going to talk to you about it.
Think about that. Why would he say that?
He'd been visited, yeah.
Right.
And later on, when we were still having all of these sightings, or actually that first day, he called the police on us. All we'd done is parked at the side of the road, and the police, for no reason, wanted to talk to us about it.
Yep.
Why does that? That's never happened before.
Didn't he say he was worried about them taking his farm or
That's
something?
right, taking his farm.
Yeah.
Any rate, later on, what I really wanted to get to is he had a spotlight next to his house. Okay, about the 10th time I'd been down there and we'd seen lights and lights. I was by myself, and here was a spotlight down just off of me, down on the river. And the three guys came up with a container of beer and I think beer and ice, and their automatic weapons, pistols, shotguns.
Great combo.
AKs.
Wow.
They were shooting up the other side of the river as if it was a shooting range. There is actually a shooting range. It's not that far away, but it's way over there, not on the river. And I think they were just trying to discourage that animal from being around, if not shoot it itself. And I was so concerned that I took my shotgun, because I brought a shotgun, because this has happened before. It's not the first time. Right. And I went down on the river, left my car, because I was afraid they were going to come over at me.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, I snuck back to the car and took off. But ever since that, there's never been another sighting.
Ouch. Yeah, it's too bad.
I have a recording from a gentleman who lives in Idaho. And he was referred to me by Ken Gerhardt, the famous cryptozoologist. This gentleman has seen a pteranodon twice in the same location in Idaho. This may back the claim of this video. I don't know. But it sure is potential for it. I know the exact place where this is, and it happened in November. Twice. Same location.
November last year?
No, I think this goes back about at least 4 years.
Okay.
His name is Fred Jones. He said it's okay to use his name. And he is still recovering, but he wants me to come out to Centralia, Washington, where he currently lives. And then he wants to show me in Idaho where he saw this creature. He believes they're still there. It was the same one, and he originally thought the shadow of it crossing overhead was of an eagle. But as he looked up, that's when he locked eyes on this thing. Now, in this case, he was scared to death, and this thing was ready to kill him. Because it turned and looked at him, too.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then it was getting ready to come towards him. He whipped out his crossbow. And as he's thinking about firing, he hesitated. Because he thought, what if it's the last one? Let me play that recording for you.
Okay.
Glad you called me, I really I wouldn't tell anybody about this. The only reason I did is I didn't even know anybody ever seen any ever for years. Even after I didn't know it until I watched Monster Quest.
There was a video that surfaced of an Idaho pterosaur that was seen and recorded. That wasn't by chance you, was it?
Oh, no, that wasn't.
Okay.
I seen the one on, I think it was some show. I think it might have been Monster with a woman, Laura Mason, I think.
That was my show. Yep. I've gone down there and talked to Laura. We did a documentary on her case.
Like that one right there, exactly.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it was 25 yards or 75 feet above my head.
Wow, that's not very high, is it?
No, I almost tried to shoot it at bow hunting. I had an arrow on my string. I was just watching this. Anyway, a shadow come up upon me and down on me, and I thought, well, it was just a bird, and it kept wider and wider, and I thought, God, is that an eagle maybe coming down on me? I'm all camo up, and if this is getting really wide, this shadow, so I pulled my bow up quick over my head and waved it back, and I was kind of afraid almost to turn around because the shadow was so big, and then I looked up, and it was funny, and then the wing went kind of, then tipped out, and that's when it opened up its wings and then started flapping. It seen me then. You know, I mean, it seen me. It was going to attack me. I know it was. I'm glad I waved my bow up in the air because thing, after looking at its teeth when it screeched at me, right after it unfolded its wings right above my head, it poured over me and then started flapping things right down at me in my eye, screeching at me. And then I could see. Tell you that was, I'm glad it turned around like that, or I was out a little bit to cast a shadow, or that thing probably would have.
Interesting. So you actually had a chance to hear this thing too.
I had a 44 Magnum right on me. I grabbed it and shot the thing. You know, I thought about it, and then I thought, God, we're one of the only ones left. You know.
Did you see this thing during the day or night?
It was at the day.
During the day, wow. Amazing.
Yeah, it was same exact time, both days, because I was hunting on the road a couple of miles from there in the morning. The deer, I bow hunter, and they migrate to this area. Anyway, and then I got done hunting there. I thought, well, I'll go up and hunt on this other hill up above there a little higher. That's when I seen it the first time, and it crossed this upper. It's in a mountainous terrain above this reservoir and this road where the river is, and it's up above there a ways. And it flew across in the same place there. The second time I seen it, as it did the first. So, and the second time I seen it, after, you know, I was driving down the road, this big bird go by, and I go, God, that's a Pterosaur. You know, and I found it hard to, and the last time I thought, and now I'm seeing Pterosaurs. Knew it in my back of my mind that it was real because it was so big, and I'd seen the notch head and its beak. You know, it was probably 150 yards the first, and then the next time, 2-3 days later, I was on the hill of this ravine, watching for deer to migrate down. That's when I hit the next time. Second time.
So did you just say you've seen it twice?
Yeah, I seen it twice. Yeah.
Oh wow! What time of the year was this?
It was flying the same direction exactly.
Okay.
Both times
Okay.
It was in November, middle of November.
Wow. So they're not afraid of the cold,
right?
Or trying to stay away from cold weather.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
All right. We are nearing the end of our show now. Let's open it up. I can imagine what's going to come from this later on. Okay. I'm going to do my best to control it a little bit because I know there's going to be opposition. There always is. We cannot change the minds of the cynics. We cannot change the minds of the skeptics. We can only enlighten what's out there. And I'm going to do my best to do that. I'm going to continue to do that until there's no more life in me. This is what I'm meant to do. I'm going to continue to do it. And I hope that everyone who is watching and listening will continue to come forward and share their testimony. It only strengthens this cause even more. Yes. Catherine, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I kind of wondered how that creature came about, or how whether they were never extinct, or whether someone is creating them in a lab, or if it just migrated and kind of accidentally flew in there like you were talking about.
Right, let's take this time to get theories. That's a good idea.
That's really the only thing that I'm really thinking about. And I also wonder if it if it had hurt anybody. That's not something we can really answer here. I did reach out to the Puyallup Indian tribe, and they're the closest ones to Point Defiance, and I didn't get a call back, but I plan to pester them some more.
That's
Was
a
it
good
discreet?
idea.
That's a
Real
good idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
Discreet message, in a sense?
Well, no, I just left a voicemail. I
Okay.
said, this is not a hoax. I'm not, crazy or high or anything. I really want to know if something happened, or if somebody saw the same creature I did back in 1999 at Point Defiance. And I figured that I would reach out to First Americans, because they have their finger on the pulse of nature and animals in the area where they are, and they seem to be a lot more forthcoming and tell the truth more about what's going on out there. They don't really seem to have an agenda other than paying attention to what's going on in nature, which is a different trajectory, in my opinion, than maybe some of the other people that aren't tribal.
We find that most of the sightings of these types, not just pterosaurs, but other creatures that we've been looking for, happen by accident, from people being way out in the bush that maybe make their living out there, like fishermen and hunters and various types of people like that, rather than somebody expressly going out there to find them.
Right, exactly. Which is an unfair advantage to us, because we're out trying to look for them. But you got to think like the animal in order to find it, which is difficult when you have something that's flying.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Looking at your drawing, the body size, if it's in the same, general size as a human body, I'm talking about the thorax now, everything down from the head to about where the feet start.
Sure.
Is that about the size of a human?
It was a little bigger, and it pooched out more. You know what I mean? The middle. You know how when you look at the underside of a frog, and their belly kind of goes wink, a little bit. It was a little poochier. Okay. I mean, some of us are poochier than others, but it went out to the sides a little. Pooch went out to the side as opposed to the front. So kind of.
I'm assuming there's a lot of air sacs and air in this animal, but still, it's got to be somewhere in the neighborhood of the size of the weight of a human.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be heavier.
Or heavier.
Well, I mean, you think about even just the beak and the bony crest. The bony crest has to be pretty heavy.
But I'm thinking that
Unless
still
it's
could have
hollow.
a lot of air in it. But yeah, we're talking like 300 pounds.
Wow.
A 300-pound animal, that could take you out if it wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Wow.
Well, one of the things you have to remember, the birds have porous bones and other factors that make them lighter than what the space they occupy would appear. Yes. So this may be similar to that, too.
But the gut, like she's saying, that's water.
You'd think so. Something as heavy as water, anyway.
That's exactly what Laura Dean, she goes by a couple of names here, I'll make sure I say the right name, described on the body of her pterosaur. It wasn't 35 feet, but it was huge. And that's the one that came up on the side of her truck, 6 feet from the truck in Arkansas.
That was in Arkansas.
Yeah. I went to the exact location, and I stayed out there at night with Garth Gassman, and we investigated that whole area. Whatever it was that just drew him under or out of that bridge, it might have been her vehicle just passing over that startled him. But he was struggling to gain altitude.
I bet.
He's literally trying to kick himself and flapping as he's trying to get away. But it was enough to startle him, and it was enough to confuse her, because she was like, what am I looking at here?
I can see that.
And that's why she went home and typed in featherless bird, and that showed up.
Yeah.
So if we get to a theory here about where it was coming from and where it went, what's your thoughts on it, gentlemen?
Well, one of the things I think is that they do migrate. At that particular time, there was at least that one, and probably others in the proximity. Now, because they can fly and they can fly high in the sky, probably can move long distances in a short period of time. So it might be there were others on the Olympic Peninsula, who knows how many. But like I have said before, I think they probably have a rookery maybe down in Zacatecas. John Pendleton, who he and his wife were missionaries down there. I believe she's still down there, but he died. But he was very interested in doing more to expose that area where they've had many sightings down there in that particular state in Mexico. And so I was thinking, well, maybe that's where they grow up, and then once they get to a certain size, they move out to other areas.
Right.
So what's a rookery?
Well, it's a place where the young are raised to a certain point.
A bunch of them together, kind of
Yes,
congregated.
yes.
Okay.
A great example of this is sea turtles.
Yep.
Okay. Because they have a large range.
Yep.
When we think about cougars or mountain lions, their distance is great too. I've heard anywhere from about 50 to 250 miles.
Yep.
So imagine his flight trajectory. So these guys are being seen Arkansas, Texas, Florida. They're coming from all over. And wherever they feel is there's more food, or maybe it's a pattern that says, hey, look, I'm done here. I'm moving on to the next state. So
According to what John Whitcomb, who has been keeping track of these sightings for a long time, he said that most of them are being sighted in California.
Yep. That is true.
Where the concentration of them are.
And they've been seen in the alleyways, broad daylight, just scavenging through garbage cans. Yeah,
It makes sense in California if you think about just this last decade, the amount of wildfires, the amount of mudslides, the amount of just pushing them out of their natural habitat. There's been wildfires for the last 10 years, so much burnt down. So the fact that they're being pushed out into the city with all the wildlife and everything getting, the water's being diverted from where it usually goes, and so
yeah.
Well, I always thought about something. I think they do migrate, but I think there are probably some that don't migrate.
Exactly.
Kind of like the white pelican. I'd never seen pelicans in Washington, but I saw them in Yakima. And then I started looking into it, and there are rookeries of pelicans year-round, certain little spots in Oregon and Washington.
Yep.
Especially Washington. And what we saw, this animal we saw, we thought would probably have its nest on the ridge of the mountain Ada that we were right next to. Okay. And if we were going that direction as we were looking into the valley and the mountain over on the left, it was virgin land. There was nothing there for 30 miles on the left. But just over the side of the peak went right down into the Pacific Ocean, where it'd be perfect for feeding.
Yep.
Well, I'm thinking that the animal you saw, it might be around there, have its nest, but the Olympic Peninsula, where I grew up, the Olympic Peninsula has practically nobody except on the perimeter. In the middle of it, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And it's surrounded by the Pacific Ocean.
And that's perfect habitat. They want mountainous areas that have food, basically rivers and lakes, and they want some crags and caves where they can get out of the weather.
And those updrafts coming off the mountains, because that weight is not easy.
Yeah, that too.
To conserve energy and stuff like that.
Again, going back to Thunderbirds, they like to ride the currents.
Yeah,
there might
absolutely.
Be a pattern.
Yep.
Thermal patterns.
Like Catherine said, the animal she saw was just riding a current that was practically no air current. I mean, it was like a jet plane on skids, just easily moving without flapping its wings much.
Something I'd like to add about California, though, consider the fracking.
Okay?
The earthquakes.
Yep.
If these guys are also subterranean dwellers, and they're in these cave systems, when you have that happening, this could be driving them out of their home.
Absolutely.
And then they go look for something else, or they come back to it. Yep. I agree. California is a hot spot for these guys, the Sierra Nevadas.
Always have been, or recently?
It depends on what you want to say. I probably, for me, recently would probably be decades.
But that's still recent. It wasn't always like that.
It could have changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't you tell me that the high concentration of sightings is around Fresno?
Not necessarily Fresno.
Okay.
I don't know that exactly. I think Jonathan would, which is what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Jonathan on this program. He needs to be heard and seen as well. Some people have considered his work like Rex Gilroy, where it's a lot of people are very skeptic of him. I mean, this whole thing is a lot of people be skeptical of it to be indeed, but I still think he's a big voice in this field and needs to be heard. So I want to pick his brain a little bit more on this and see what he has to say. Some would argue that Florida is even a greater hotspot for these guys.
Really?
You've got people who are just going for jogs and they see them. But we're talking the Rhamphorhynchus versions, the smaller, the pterodactyloids. Okay, we're not talking necessarily the larger versions of them.
Well, they'd have a different habitat because it's perfectly flat there.
Oh, perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really warm all the time.
And California's very warm. Nevada, there's sightings there. Texas. They are coming from Arkansas to Texas and then back to Arkansas.
Wow.
Such as Jason McLean's amazing encounter for himself, 6 feet from his face. Okay, because it came around a canyon on the 10 Mile Creek. And him and his friend were out fishing, and his friend left. So he went to go get the rest of their poles, and he heard what he described as a sick crow of some sort, something really ugly. And it turned the corner. He's like, wow, that is the biggest heron I'd ever seen. But when it got 6 feet from his face, he realized he was looking at a pterodactyl. And he considered it a Rhamphorhynchus, but had at least a 15-foot wingspan.
Wow.
And the sound it made, the smell that it had. What I love about his encounter, how authentic, how genuine, because he was right there. And you'd think someone would be scared of that, but he was just in awe. There was no time to pull out a camera.
Right.
He didn't have a camera back in '93. Another great person to talk to.
Where was that?
That was in DeSoto, Texas, of 1993, on the 10 Mile Creek. Yeah. Excellent encounter. All gray. A beautiful grayish blue, I think is what he said. Yeah.
It's funny about the color.
Yeah.
Because when this animal came out of the tree, I'm talking now on the Yakima thing.
Yeah.
And the light, it seemed to disappear. You'd think if it was a bird, you could follow it, but it couldn't. Isn't that weird?
It is. I'm glad you brought that up because there was something I wanted to add to that. I asked Garth, even if with the glow, you should still be able to see the outline of this creature, right? He
Yeah,
said
once
no.
it stopped glowing, but there wasn't,
Yeah.
should have seen something.
They almost leave plasma trails. The ones that glow, it's like a trail, in a sense.
Yeah.
From some people say that.
Yeah,
Not
I
everyone.
think there is a trail.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
Yes, it is.
But why can't you see it in the background? It wasn't dark yet. It was.
Maybe because it wasn't moving. It doesn't move. I mean, if it just
It
glides.
was in the air. Well, yeah, maybe it was going so slow.
Doesn't-
My mind wasn't picking up that it was still slow. Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah.
And with a glow, depending on the magnitude of that glow, maybe it just covers that entire body. I mean, look at a firefly. You can see that glow from the distance. But
Right.
as you get closer and closer, can you see the bug? I don't know.
No.
Still
you
the
can't.
light.
No, you cannot see
Maybe
the
this source is so powerful that it still covers up that creature indefinitely
Sounds like it. Yep.
and engulfs it. All right, gentlemen, anything else you'd like to add? Now's your chance. I encourage you to go ahead and interview Catherine again at another time. I think we need more of that. Anyone that I can refer to, I will, especially Jason McLean or Laura Dean. I think they'd be willing to talk to you for the research a little bit more forward. But this has been an eye-opener for me. I continue to learn about these amazing creatures, and what do you know? Surprise, surprise, as a child you think that your favorite is a Tyrannosaur, but that's kind of the popular thing, isn't it? But what do you know? I'm studying something that flies. Something I never thought would be my favorite, but it is. And that's why we call this the Ropen Network. A place for people to come, share their testimony, move on, or continue to reach out and help this organization grow. and we are growing. And I'm grateful for that. And I praise God for that. I praise him for his amazing creation, that he's able to allow people to witness it.
That's right.
And how much of a blessing that is to see it. I want to say thank you for Catherine Fuller for being here today, Peter Beach, Milt Marcy, Jeff Carone. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We'll see you next time on the Ropen Radio Network.